Chapter 1487. The man looked at the woman's blurry figure and muttered, "Elder Gu has already rushed to Tianyuan New City. I reckon that when we arrive, we will be able to meet Elder Gu's only disciple. I have the same thoughts as you. When the time comes, I will definitely meet that person." Following which, the man put away his thoughts and urged the group to speed up and reach Tianyuan New City as soon as possible. Qingshan Imperial City, Qingyu District, Yu residence. Yi Hao and Wu Wenyong said goodbye to Yu Yingluan at the door and returned to the inn. The two of them returned to the inn and went to sleep in their own rooms. There were still 2 days before the third round of the Heavenly Street Convention. Yi Hao was not in a hurry to rest. Instead, he took out a set of array diagrams and studied it carefully. After an unknown period of time, the lamp in the room suddenly flickered. Yi Hao frowned and kept the array diagrams. He looked at the black figure in front of the window and said, "Immortal Cloud Pavilion, Dark Department?" The black figure stood at the window and did not move. With a hoarse voice, he said, "Young Master Yi, young Master Shu invites you." "Invite? Where to?" "Green Fallen Peak, Immortal Cloud Pavilion." Following which, the black figure jumped out of the window. Yi Hao blew out the lamp and followed closely. The two of them walked in the dark night one after another. Not long later, the black figure brought Yi Hao out of Qingyu District and arrived at a hidden forest. In the center of the forest, there was a sacrificial altar made of spiritual stones. There was a faint flow of spiritual energy on top of the altar. The black figure stood at the center of the sacrificial altar. Yi Hao followed him. Following which, the black figure slowly squatted down. He cut his wrist and dripped a drop of blood on the sacrificial altar. At the same time, he was chanting something. Suddenly, the sacrificial altar under Yi Hao's feet exploded with a dazzling light. Following which, a white pillar of light shot up into the sky. Not long later, the light disappeared by itself. Only a black figure was left on the sacrificial altar. A painful dizziness came over. When Yi Hao opened his eyes again, he discovered that the sacrificial altar had disappeared. What replaced it was a fake mountain, a lake and a fragrant garden. Right in front of the rockery, a familiar figure was slowly walking over. That figure came in front of Yi Hao and said with a smile, "Long time no see, Yi Hao." Yi Hao looked at that person and frowned. "Don't. If possible, I would rather not see you." Exiled Immortal chuckled. He didn't mind and continued to lead the way. Yi Hao followed behind him silently. Along the way, Yi Hao did not see a single person. He only saw some flowers and plants, so he asked, "This is the Celestial Cloud Pavilion?" "That's right." Banished Immortal pinched his fingers and said, "Because time was tight, Mr. Shu ordered someone to send you here using a teleportation formation. Immortal Cloud, Immortal Cloud, Immortal Cloud, Immortal Cloud, Immortal laughed, Immortal, Exiled Immortal chuckled. "That wasn't an ordinary teleportation formation. It's a blood sacrifice formation that uses essence blood and spirit stones as support. Even so, it still used up a lot of spirit stones to send you to this courtyard. It's not something that can be used easily. I think Immortal Cloud, Immortal Cloud, Immortal Cloud Pavilion has something important to tell me. I don't know. You have to ask Immortal Cloud Pavilion yourself." Then, Immortal Cloud Pavilion led Yi Hao through many stone doors and corridors. They stopped in front of a stone wall. Immortal Cloud Pavilion looked at the row of candles on the left. Finally, he walked to the second candle and turned its base gently. Buzz! The stone wall turned gently and the door opened. Immortal Cloud Pavilion said softly, "Go in. Immortal Cloud Pavilion is waiting for you inside." Yi Hao took a step forward. As soon as he walked in, the stone wall closed with a bang. Yi Hao walked in the dark corridor and saw a ray of light at the end of the corridor. After passing through, he found that the secret room behind the stone wall wasn't as dark as he imagined. Instead, it was brightly lit. However, in this huge underground secret room, other than Yu Wenshu, who was sitting on a chair with his back to him, he was the only one. You're here. Yu Wenshu's familiar voice sounded in the secret room. However, his back was still facing Yi Hao. Yi Hao walked forward quietly and asked, "Yes? What do you want from me?" Yu Wenshu chuckled and pointed to a piece of white cloth beside him. "There really is something that I have to ask you to come for." "What is it?" "There's a piece of white cloth over there. Take a look." Yi Hao walked over and took a look. He found 2 headless corpses. He immediately understood. "How is it? Do you know them?" Yu Wenshu stood up and came to Yi Hao's side. "Yes, they're from the dark department of the Celestial Cloud Pavilion." "So, these 2 people were really killed by you?" Yu Wenshu stared coldly at Yi Hao. His black pupils revealed a deep questioning. "Yes." Yi Hao didn't dodge Yu Wenshu's questioning. He looked straight at Yu Wenshu and said, "These 2 people followed me. I thought they wanted to harm me, so I ordered 2 guards of the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm to kill them. Also, why did you send people to follow me? If you really don't trust me, just kill me. Why do you have to do this?" Yu Wenshu didn't answer. Instead, he stared at Yi Hao's red pupils, as if he wanted to see if Yi Hao was lying. After a while, Yu Wenshu smiled and said, "Don't be angry. There are many forces in the Qingshan Imperial City. I was afraid that you would accidentally offend someone from a big force, so I sent people to protect you secretly. I didn't expect this to happen. The protection is fake. The surveillance is real, right?" "Yi Hao, you misunderstood. If I had known that you had 2 guards of the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, I wouldn't have added feet to a snake." Yi Hao snorted, but his expression eased a little. He said to Yu Wenshu, "You don't have to be suspicious of me. My teacher is the 5th level alchemist, Gu Sheng. I think you already know this. As for these 2 guards, they were given to me by him. They just arrived not long ago. You should be relieved now." Yu Wenshu laughed and patted Yi Hao's shoulder. "Yi Hao, what are you talking about? How could I be worried about you?" Suddenly, Yu Wenshu took out a Buddha-shaped jade stone. He held it in his hand and snapped his fingers at Yi Hao. Yi Hao was stunned. He froze in place, his eyes empty. Yu Wenshu circled Yi Hao again and again. At the same time, he sneered, "Ha, you want to fight with me? You're still too inexperienced. No matter how strong you are, once you've been hit by the Gu Heart Stone, you can only be obediently manipulated by me." When Yu Wenshu circled him for the 3rd time, Yi Hao suddenly moved. Then, he came back to his senses and gasped for breath. Yu Wenshu stopped sneering and thought, "It seems that the Gu Heart Stone hasn't completely taken over his mind. However, it's still very effective. There's no harm in waiting." Yi Hao, who had returned to normal, asked, "What happened just now?" Yu Wenshu smiled and said, "No, you were just distracted." Chapter 1488. Is that so? Yi Hao was a bit suspicious. He clearly remembered that he lost consciousness and couldn't move his body. Seeing this, Yu Wenshu changed the topic. "Oh right, there's another important thing that I called you here for." "What is it? Didn't I promise you that I would help you win?" Yu Wenshu poured 2 cups of wine on the table and handed one to Yi Hao. "Since you promised, you'll definitely do it. Also, if you win and marry that Ling Junyun, it will only be good for the Yuan clan. But I'm only a 6th level Spirit Emperor. I might be able to fight against an 8th level Spirit Emperor, but it's hard to say if I'm facing a 9th level Spirit Emperor. It doesn't matter. The only enemy you have to face is Qing Gaozhan." "HM?" Yi Hao didn't understand. Yu Wenshu clapped his hands. Suddenly, a figure walked out from the corner. Yi Hao was a bit surprised to see the figure. Yu Wenshu pointed at the figure and said to Yi Hao, "This is Yuanli. He's someone that the Yuan clan sent to participate in this competition. Don't worry, he won't be your opponent. If you 2 meet in the 3rd round, Yuanli will immediately admit defeat. Hearing this, Yi Hao looked at Yuan Li. Yuan Li lowered his head and nodded. Yi Hao relaxed and said, "Even so, I'm afraid it'll be hard for me to win against Qin Gao." Yuan Shu laughed and waved his hand to let Yuan Li leave first. Then, he brought Yi Hao to a small room in the secret room. Yuan Li raised his head and looked at Yi Hao's back. A trace of unwillingness flashed in his black eyes, but he quickly hid it and left the secret room. Yuan Shu pointed at the stone seat in the room that was slowly flowing with spiritual energy and said, "This stone seat was formed naturally. It's connected to the spirit vein under our green fallen peak. Cultivating here for a day is equivalent to cultivating outside for 10 days. In these 2 days, I'll let the people in the residence bring you treasures. Prepare to break through to the 7th level Spirit Emperor." Then, Yuan Shu left without giving Yi Hao a chance to speak. Yi Hao looked at Yuan Shu's departing figure, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Not long after, someone brought some treasures to the small room. After putting them down, they left. Yi Hao sat cross-legged on the stone seat with his eyes closed. He quietly absorbed the spiritual energy around him and began to break through to the 8th level Spirit Emperor. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the night before Yi Hao was about to take part in the competition, a strong spiritual qi of heaven and earth spread out from the secret chamber of the Yuan mansion. Yi Hao looked at his hands, his face full of joy. Yuan Shu leaned against the door and said with a smile, "Not bad. You didn't let me down. You broke through to the 7th level Spirit Emperor." "Thank you, Master Shu." Yi Hao cupped his hands and thanked him. Yuan Shu waved his hand and said, "If you really want to thank me, then take down the champion. Of course. Stabilize your cultivation and go find Zhe Xian. He'll take you away." Okay. 4 hours later, Yi Hao left the secret room. Under Zhe Xian's lead, they returned to the forest through the blood sacrifice array. Yi Hao looked at the black figure on the altar. When he was about to thank him, the black figure left. Yi Hao could only silently follow him back to the inn. After Yi Hao left, Zhe Xian went into the secret room. Yuan Shu sat on a chair and asked lazily, "Yi Hao left?" "He left." Zhe Xian stood to the side, wanting to say something but hesitating. Yuan Shu glanced at him and shouted, "Is there something else?" Zhe Xian gathered his courage and said, "Master, I just want to ask, is it right or wrong for us to raise Yi Hao like this?" Yuan Shu sneered. Zhe Xian hurriedly knelt. "Do you think your master would do something that would make him lose money?" Zhe Xian touched the ground with his head and said hurriedly, "My master is wise and powerful. Of course he wouldn't do something that would make him lose money." Yuan Shu twirled the wine cup in his hand and murmured, "What I give Yi Hao now, I'll take it all back soon, with interest." Yuan Shu kicked Zhe Xian and asked, "How's Yuan Mu?" "Master, everything is as usual." "Good. So keep a close eye on him at this critical juncture. Don't be careless." "Yes." "Oh right. Withdraw the shadow guards you sent to keep an eye on Yi Hao." Zhe Xian was confused. Yuan Shu kicked him and shouted angrily, "Did you not hear what this master said? Withdraw all of them." "Yes, yes." Zhe Xian kowtowed like he was pounding garlic. He hurriedly agreed and left. The next day, the remaining 6 contestants gathered in Qingshan district for the final round of the competition. Yu Wei, who had changed into a red official's robe, stood on the stage and said loudly, "Today is the 3rd round of the competition. The champion of this year's Heavenly Street Convention will be decided from the remaining 6 contestants. Those who aren't here, don't worry. Take out your projection stone and you'll still be able to see the broadcast of the competition." Now, let me introduce the top 6 contestants of this year's Heavenly Street Convention. First, Qingyun Peak, Qingao Zhan, 9th Stage Spirit Emperor. Second, Qingluo Peak, Yuan Li, 9th Stage Spirit Emperor. 6th, Tianyuan Empire, Yi San Gao, 6th Stage Spirit Emperor. After the introduction of the 6 contestants, the most popular ones were Qingao Zhan and Yuan Li. As for Yi San Gao, Many people thought he was just here to be a bystander. After the introduction of the contestants, the 6 contestants went on stage to draw lots. Then they faced each other to decide the final 3. Yi Hao was very lucky. He didn't have to fight Qin Gaozhan and Yuan Li. His opponent was Lai Yan from the Raging Flame Empire. Qin Gaozhan's opponent was Han Zhong from the Han family. Yuan Li's opponent was the only woman in the 6, Yuan Jingxin. The 6 people went on stage at the same time and the competition began. Yi Hao made an inviting gesture to Lai Yan. Lai Yan also returned the gesture. Then Lai Yan raised his blade with both hands. His body tensed up as he stared at Yi Hao and said, "I know you. Although your cultivation isn't strong, your spirit formation isn't weak. I won't be as careless as Lin Tianyi. So, you have no chance of winning this competition." Yi Hao chuckled and said, "Is that so?" At this moment, the Han family's patriarch, Han Shi, suddenly roared, "Qin Yunji, what is the meaning of this? How can you be so heavy-handed towards my Han family?" Qin Yunji replied indifferently, "Didn't I already say that Qin Gaozhan isn't from my Qin family? What does it have to do with me?" "You!" Han Shi's face turned red with anger. Qin Gaozhan kicked Han Zhong, whose tendons had been broken, out of the stage and laughed loudly. Chapter 1489. Qin Gaozhan looked at the half-dead Han Zhong on the ground and mocked. 2 days ago, I taught the trash of the Yu family a lesson. Who would have thought that it would be your turn today? What a bunch of trash. You're not even a match for me." Speaking of this, Qin Gaozhan glanced at Yi Hao intentionally or unintentionally. On the high platform, Han Shi angrily smashed his wine cup and left. Yu Yingluan sullenly drank his wine. Yi Hao looked at Han Zhong and thought of Yu Sanjiang. 2 days ago, Yu Sanjiang was also lying helplessly on the ground and almost met the King of Hell. At this moment, Lai Yan, who was bending his legs, suddenly moved and attacked with his blade. Yi Hao didn't even look and raised his hand to block. Lai Yan was sent flying. The Raging Flame Kingdom messenger, who was smiling from ear to ear, stiffened and shouted, "Impossible, Yi Hao is only a 6th-level spirit emperor. How could he send Lai Yan flying with one palm? It's impossible." Yuan Shu smiled and said, "Did you see it clearly? Is Yi Hao really a 6th-level spirit emperor?" Hearing this, the Raging Flame Kingdom messenger took a closer look and murmured, "7th-level spirit emperor. That's even more impossible. In just 2 days he broke through. How is that possible?" Yuan Shu smiled but didn't say anything. Ling Junyun and Yu Yingluan looked at Yuan Shu at the same time. Their eyes met for a few seconds and then they looked away. Yi Hao turned his head and released his aura. He said, "Let's finish this quickly. I can't take it anymore." Lai Yan, who had just stood up, was shocked. Before he could do anything, Yi Hao appeared in front of him and kicked him away. Lai Yan turned around in the air with difficulty and slashed down with his blade. Yi Hao shouted angrily. His crimson Wu Dao sword blocked Lai Yan's attack. Yi Hao stood where he was without moving an inch. Lai Yan's entire body kept retreating. Yi Hao waved his sword with one hand and said in a deep voice, "Wu Dao sword, 24 swords." Suddenly, dozens of red sword lights flashed behind Lai Yan's back. Lai Yan wailed, "Stop! I admit defeat. I admit defeat." Bang! Yi Hao withdrew his sword and landed safely on the ground. Lai Yan fell from mid-air and half-knelt on the ground. Then, he got up and cupped his hands towards Yi Hao, saying, "Thank you for showing mercy, Brother Yi." On the other side, Yuan Li also ended his battle. Huangfu Jingxin, whose right arm was injured, nodded at Yuan Li, who stood proudly before jumping off the stage. At this point, the final 3 had already been decided. They were Qin Gao, Zhan, Yuan Li, and Yi San Gao. The 3 of them rested for 2 hours before drawing lots again. The 2 people with numbers written on their lots would fight each other. Those without numbers would get a bye and directly enter the finals. Yi Hao slowly unfolded the piece of paper and saw the number 1 written on it. He raised his head and met Qin Gaozhan's gaze. Qin Gaozhan smiled as he showed the piece of paper with numbers written on it. Then, he made a throat-slitting gesture towards Yi Hao. Yuanli looked at the blank piece of paper in his hand with a hesitant expression. He slowly put it away and sat in the contestant area. Yi Hao and Qin Gaozhan went onto the stage. Yi Hao, who was standing on the stage, pulled out his Wu Dao sword and stabbed it into the ground. He coldly looked at Qin Gaozhan. On the stage, Qin Yunji casually said, "Let's not keep this person alive." On the stage, Qin Gaozhan sneered and stretched his body. He loudly said, "Yo, isn't this the other trash of the Qin Yu duo, Yi Sangao? Your luck is not bad, you actually made it here. Whether it's luck or not, you come and try." Yi Hao made a provocative gesture towards Qin Gaozhan. "Oomph." Qin Gaozhan coldly snorted and mocked, "Don't tell me you think you can fight me just because you defeated 2 trash of the 8th level Spirit Emperor realm. You should know that the difference between the 9th level and the 8th level is not something you, a 7th level, can understand." After he finished speaking, the faces of the envoys from the Yueluan Empire and the Raging Flame Empire turned cold. Qin Gaozhan did not care about the 2 important figures at all. He continued, "Didn't you see? Han Zhong, who is also an 8th level Spirit Emperor, couldn't even last 3 rounds against me. Do you still think the 8th level is very powerful?" Yi Hao still had a smile on his face. He said, "What you gave Sangao that day, I will pay you back double." "What a joke. You? Go to hell." Yi Hao pulled out his sword. Qin Gaozhan swung his fist. The 2 collided. Yuan Shu looked at the battle on the arena. He swirled the wine in his cup and looked at Yuanli. He said to himself, "Yi Hao, if you defeat Qin Gaozhan, you will be the champion of the Heavenly Street Convention. Don't disappoint me." Not far away, Ling Junyun and Yu Yingluan were watching the battle closely. Yi Hao's victory or defeat would determine whether their cooperation could continue. Bang! After the first collision, Qin Gaozhan did not move at all. Yi Hao retreated to the edge of the arena. Qin Gaozhan smiled ferociously. "Trash will always be trash. You can't even take a punch from me. Go to hell." Yi Hao's face turned cold. 6 fire phoenixes soared into the sky. Qin Gaozhan did not even look at them. He punched and the 6 fire phoenixes turned into nothingness. Then he took a step forward to the edge of the arena. His left fist went straight for Yi Hao's abdomen. Yi Hao gently turned around and dodged Qin Gaozhan's full-force attack. Before he could completely escape the attack range, Qin Gaozhan's fist turned into a palm and went straight for Yi Hao's head. Yi Hao looked at the incoming palm. He did not doubt that if he was hit by this palm, his head would definitely explode. Without hesitation, he shook his sleeves. Several flying swords flashing with cold light went straight for Qin Gaozhan's head. It was a life for a life. As long as Qin Gaozhan did not withdraw his attack, his head would definitely be pierced by the flying swords that Yi Hao fed with his blood. Qin Gaozhan wanted to take it head-on, but when he saw the red light on the tip of the flying swords, he withdrew his hand and retreated to avoid the flying swords. Yi Hao landed safely in the distance. He waved his left hand and the flying swords returned to his sleeves. In just an instant, the 2 sides had gone back and forth twice. They had wandered outside the gates of hell twice. Yi Hao provoked, 3 rounds have passed. What other moves do you have? Use them. Otherwise, you won't have a chance. Qin Gaozhan's fists collided and sneered. What a joke. A mere 7th level Spirit Emperor trash. Is he worth my full force? On the high platform, Qin Yunji narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself, "Use your full force. Let him die thoroughly. Don't waste any more time." In the arena, Qin Gaozhan suddenly changed his mind. He moved his fists forward, and a pair of black gloves suddenly appeared on his hands. Qin Gaozhan's aura soared, and soon, everyone present turned pale with fright. This guy, is he finally showing his true strength? Yuwenli looked at Qin Gaozhan coldly. TSK, I didn't expect this Qin Gaozhan to have some skills. This time, Yi Hao won't be easy to deal with. Yuanshu muttered to himself. This is... Ling Juanyun's expression changed. She had been stuck at the 9th level Spirit Emperor for many years. She was very familiar with Qin Gaozhan's aura. Chapter 1490. Yuing Luan looked at Qin Gaozhan's rising aura and murmured, "Half-step Spirit Monarch?" As expected. Qin Gaozhan, who was standing in the arena, said in high spirits, "I wanted to play with you more, but I changed my mind. I want you to know what despair is." Half-step Spirit Monarch? Yi Hao's face turned cold. He thought, this is tricky. Yi Hao was already at the 7th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, but he used some kind of secret technique to hide his real strength. Therefore, he had been trying his best to break through to the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm during the 2 days of cultivation in the Yuan Mansion. The aura that was released in the Yuan Mansion was actually because he had broken through to the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm. He deliberately restrained his aura so that Yuan Shu would mistake him for a 7th level Spirit Emperor realm. If it was just an ordinary 9th level Spirit Emperor, his 7th level strength would be enough. However, if it was a half-step Spirit Monarch, it would be troublesome. Qin Gaozhan stretched out a hand and smiled. "I'll give you a chance. Kneel down and beg for mercy, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you'll die without a complete corpse." Yi Hao held his sword with both hands and secretly accumulated spiritual power. He smiled. "Do you know? Many people have said this to me before, but do you know what happened later?" Qin Gaozhan frowned. Yi Hao smiled. "Later, they all died." Boom. Qin Gaozhan appeared directly in front of Yi Hao and punched Yi Hao in the chest. Yi Hao swallowed back a mouthful of blood. Before he landed, he took out many spiritual stones engraved with spiritual arrays and threw them at the ground. Qin Gaozhan stomped his foot and shouted, "Spiritual arrays? Don't even think about it." He punched the ground with both fists. The spiritual stones were shattered by the shadows of his fists as soon as they touched the ground. None of them landed safely. Yi Hao landed. His pupils shrank and he growled, "7th sword, Phoenix Spirit." The 7 fire phoenixes roared and rushed toward Qin Gaozhan. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully using the 7th move of the Phoenix Dance of the 9 Heavens. The host is rewarded with a fragment of the void mirror. Yi Hao was stunned. Why was it this broken mirror again? What's the use of it? "Master, if you have 5 fragments, you can form a small mirror that will allow you to hide in the void for a short period of time." Huh? Isn't that much more convenient than a spiritual array? Of course. Will I be rewarded with a fragment every time I use a new sword technique? The system's reward is random. This is uncertain. Qin Gaozhan's rose voice, the system, Qing's roar, Qing what? A 9th level spirit, Gaozhan, level Feng Yi. Feng Yi Yi Hao, and Yi He Qin Gaozhan said he said, he red to the to realm. Said have said was, Yi was? Gao's Feng Qi was? And was Yi long was a Yi Hao looked at Qin Gaozhan, who was still in the air. He quickly took out dozens of spiritual stones and ran along the edge of the arena, setting up a spiritual array. When the last spiritual stone entered the ground, Qin Gaozhan fell heavily onto the arena. Qin Gaozhan looked around and didn't see Yi Hao. He sneered, "Yi San Gao, do you think I'm Lin Tianyi? Do you think I'll fall for your trick again?" Just then, a spiritual light appeared in the center of the arena. There was a faint flow of spiritual energy. "Yi San Gao, is it fun to use the same trick twice?" Yi Hao was still hidden in the void and didn't move. Qin Gaozhan looked at the center of the arena again and suddenly realized something was wrong. A white pillar of light suddenly shot up into the sky from the center of the arena. A figure stood on top of the pillar of light. Qin Gaozhan narrowed his eyes. It was Yi Hao, the person he had been searching for. Yi Hao, who was standing on the pillar of light, smiled and said, "You're so powerful. I won't use the same trick twice, so I'll give you something new this time." He leaned forward and placed his right hand on the pillar of light under his feet. He roared, "Array 18 totem chains!" Boom! 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 Suddenly, 18 pillars of light rose and fell without any pattern. Sometimes, the pillars of light appeared under Qin Gaozhan's feet. Sometimes, they appeared beside him. There was no pattern. Facing the fluctuating light pillar, Qin Gaozhan punched the light pillar. However, the light pillar didn't shatter as he expected. Instead, his entire arm was sucked in. Not only was he unable to break free, but all the pillars of light were crazily closing in on Qin Gaozhan. At the critical moment, Qin Gaozhan pulled the pillar of light from the ground. Then, he jumped into the air and dodged the 17 pillars of light. Qin Gaozhan, who was still in midair, smashed the light beam in his hand towards Yi Hao, who was still standing on the light beam. Facing Qin Gaozhan's fierce attack, Yi Hao chuckled. He left the pillar of light and quietly landed on the ground. When the pillar of light in Qin Gaozhan's hand came into contact with the pillar of light on the ground, it was sucked in. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull it out. Qin Gaozhan was also lifted into the air. At the same time, the remaining pillars of light swarmed over him. Yi Hao landed on the ground and panted. The spiritual array just now was the strongest spiritual array he could set up. It was a peak Tier 4 spiritual array. Therefore, it consumed a lot of spiritual energy. The pillars of light that swarmed over disappeared after hitting Qin Gaozhan. Not only that, but the 2 pillars of light that bound Qin Gaozhan disappeared as well. Qin Gaozhan landed on the ground in a sorry state. He slowly got up and said with a sinister expression, "I didn't expect your spiritual array to be so powerful. I've underestimated you. However, that's all." Yi Hao took out his Dao sword again and said with a smile, "That's all? Then take a look at your body." Qin Gaozhan lowered his head. A white circle suddenly appeared around his body. Then, the circle quickly shrunk and bound his body tightly. Qin Gaozhan's veins popped out. He tried to break free. However, more and more white circles appeared around him. Without exception, they bound his body from top to bottom. Yi Hao looked at Qin Gaozhan, who was bound by 18 white circles, and said, "Do you really think my 18 totem chains are just for fun? Damn it, I'm going to kill you. Your circles of light can't bind me. You piece of trash. When I break free, you'll definitely die. That's right. This spiritual array can't bind you. However, it's enough to buy me time." Yi Hao held his sword with both hands and pointed it to the sky. An extremely powerful aura slowly gathered at the tip of his Dao sword. Qin Gaozhan looked over and saw a pair of fiery red eyes appear behind Yi Hao. No, when he looked again, there were 2 pairs of eyes. Chapter 1491. Qin Gaozhan gathered all his spiritual energy and tried to break free from the restriction of the spiritual array. Yi Hao slowly gathered his energy and moved his arm. The tip of his sword moved down and pointed at Qin Gaozhan. Qin Gaozhan looked at the 8 phoenixes behind Yi Hao and felt his heart palpitating. He felt that the power of this move had surpassed the Spirit Emperor realm and was close to the Spirit Monarch realm. On the high platform, the casual Qin Yunji's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he threw the wine cup in his hand. Before the wine cup reached the stage, it collided with the other wine cup. The 2 wine cups fell to the ground together, leaving behind broken pieces of porcelain. Yuan Shu looked at the calm Qin Yunji and asked, "Master Qin, didn't you say that you don't know Qin Gaozhan? What do you mean?" Qin Yunji said without changing his expression, "I really don't know this Qin Gaozhan. My hand slipped and I accidentally threw the wine cup." "Haha, this is a crucial moment. Master Qin, don't slip again." "Of course." The 2 looked at each other deeply and then went silent. Qin Yunji lowered his head and didn't say anything. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Yuan Shu didn't say anything and sneered. The others seemed to be lost in thought as they looked at Yi Hao's sword strike. They either remained silent, lowered their heads in contemplation, or felt worried in their hearts. Yi Sangao, you can't kill me! Qin Gaozhan's body shook and 2 rings broke. You can't win against me. You're only a 7th-level spirit emperor. Impossible. Then, another 4 rings fell off. Now, there were only 12 rings left. Haha, how can a mere 4th-level spiritual array restrain me, a half-step spirit monarch? Boom! 10 rings exploded and only 2 rings were left on his abdomen and shoulder. Qin Gaozhan took a deep breath. Just as he was about to break through the remaining 2 rings, the 8 fire phoenixes had already arrived with the cries of phoenixes. No. Before Qin Gaozhan touched the phoenixes, he felt the aura of death and couldn't help but cry out in despair. The spiritual energy in Yi Hao's body was depleted, and he collapsed to the ground. He used the Wu Dao sword to support himself so that he wouldn't fall to the ground. He looked in the direction of the fire phoenix and murmured, 9 heavens phoenix dance, 8th sword, phoenix fall. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for using the 8th sword move of phoenix dance of the 9 heavens. The reward is 1 void mirror fragment. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the mission of collecting 5 void mirror fragments. The reward is 1 general summoning token. The system's robotic voice rang out in Yi Hao's mind. Just as Yi Hao was about to take a closer look, Qin Gao's roar interrupted him. Roar. After experiencing the pain of being bathed in fire, Qin Gaozhan was no longer as calm as before. His clothes were all burned by the fire, and the muscles on his face, thighs, and abdomen were all burned black, giving off an unpleasant smell. Qin Gaozhan, who was bathed in blood, glared fiercely at Yi Hao. Then, he bent his legs and knelt down with a plop. His upper body tilted slightly as he laid on the ground. Seeing this, Yi Hao took a deep breath. With his back facing the arena and his face facing the sky, he laid on the ground and slowly panted. He was exhausted. If he couldn't defeat Qin Gaozhan with this move, he could only admit defeat. Yi Hao looked at the dazzling sunlight and put his right arm on his forehead. He smiled and said, I won. The champion of the Heavenly Street Convention is me. Ling Junyun coughed. Yuchi Wei hurriedly stood up from his seat and announced in a clear voice, I hereby announce that Qin Gao will fight against Yi Sangao. Yi Sangao is victorious. After resting for 4 hours, the finals will begin. Yuan Shu looked at Yi Hao being helped up by the guards. He smiled and said to himself, this Yi Hao really didn't disappoint me. Behind him, Yuan Mu seemed to have sensed something as he looked in the direction Yi Hao left. It was as if he had seen Yi Hao's battle just now. He nodded silently with a faint smile on his face. Yi Hao, who was supported by guards, came to Qin Gaozhan, who still had a trace of life left. He said coldly, you crippled the tendons in Sanjiang's hands and feet, making it impossible for him to step onto the path of cultivation for the rest of his life. Today, I will do the same to you. I deliberately didn't kill you so you could experience the pain of having your cultivation crippled. When you did this, did you think this day would come? You can forgive the heavens for their sins, but you can't survive the sins you bring upon yourself. With that, Yi Hao left the stage. Then, the guards helped Qin Gaozhan, who hadn't died, down to heal. On the stage, Qin Yunji silently put down his wine cup. He was about to get up when Yuan Shu stopped him. Master Qin, where are you going? The competition isn't over yet. Qin Yunji smiled and asked, Master Yuan, don't you think the outcome has been decided? Yuan Shu smiled and said, how can it be decided? We haven't even watched the finals yet. How can you say the outcome has been decided? Qin Yunji specially looked at Yuan Li and asked, could it be that this Yuan Li isn't from your Yuan family? Can he still fight? Haha, Master Qing is joking. This Yuan Li isn't from my Yuan family. Ah, interesting. Qing Yunji smiled and said, since that's the case, I'll stay and watch the finals. Yuan Shu didn't say anything else when he heard this, and he thought to himself, of course, Yuan Li is a member of my Yuan clan. However, for the sake of allowing Yi Hao to win legitimately, I naturally have to cut ties with him. The position of champion belongs to my Yuan clan, and the Qingshan Empire will only be ruled by my Yuan clan in the future. Your Qing clan is nothing. Qing Yunji waved at the guard next to him. Then, the guard left. Yuan Shu waved at Banished Immortal, who was beside him. Then, Banished Immortal left as well. Not long after, Qing Yunji's guard returned. Zhe Xian also returned to Yuan Shu's side. Yuan Shu calmly asked, how was it? Where did Qing Yunji's guard go? The Banished Immortal replied respectfully, young master, I followed him all the way and found that the guard went to the place where Qing Gaozhan was recuperating. He stayed there for a while and then came out. Then, he came back. Yuan Shu chuckled, just a cripple. Don't mind him. Master is right. 4 hours quickly passed. Although Yi Hao hadn't recovered to his peak, his cultivation had mostly recovered. Moreover, the final winner had already been decided. So what if he wasn't at his peak? Yi Hao walked onto the stage with a relaxed expression. Yuan Li, who had just walked around, had a heavy expression as he approached the stage step by step. Yi Hao waited quietly. Not long after, Yuan Li stood in front of Yi Hao. At this moment, Yu Wei loudly said, Heavenly Street Convention's finals, Yi San Gao against Yuan Li. The winner will be the champion of the Heavenly Street Convention. I hereby announce the start of the competition. Yes. Chapter 1492. Yi Hao had a smile on his face as he made a gesture of invitation. Yuan Li's face was gloomy. He stood in place, unmoved. His mind was still constantly replaying the scene that had just happened in the corridor. At that time, the match had not yet started and he wanted to walk out of the arena to get some fresh air. He didn't think that he would meet the Qing family's guard. That guard said something to him that made his hesitant heart completely firm. Yuan Li came back to his senses and slowly raised his hands. Yi Hao had a smile on his face as he prepared to welcome the dawn of victory. Ying Luan and Ling Junyun had relaxed expressions. In their eyes, the result of this match was already decided the moment Yi Hao finished fighting Qing Gao. Yuan Shu lazily yawned and stood up. Not far away, Qing Yunji said loudly, Patriarch Yuan, where are you going? Yuan Shu said with a smile, the result of this match is already very clear. Qing Yunji stood up and said, that's right. Yi Hao used up too much spirit energy in the last match. After 4 hours of rest, he only recovered 70% of his spirit energy. Yuan Li is a 9th-level spirit emperor. More importantly, his spirit energy was not used at all. It seems like the result of this match is already very clear. Yuan Shu didn't understand and asked, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? Patriarch Yuan, didn't you say that Yuan Li isn't a member of your Yuan family? That's right. But what I want to tell you is that Yuan Li is a member of my Qing family. What? Yuan Shu was shocked. On the stage, the gloomy Yuan Li raised his hands and a pitch-black spear appeared in his hand. Then, Yuan Li swung his spear and pointed it at Yi Hao. He charged straight at Yi Hao. Yi Hao, who wanted to welcome the dawn of victory, quickly took out his Wu Dao sword and blocked Yuan Li's attack. However, he was pushed back several dozen steps by the force of the spear. Yi Hao looked at Yuan Li and asked in confusion, Brother Yuan, what is the meaning of this? Yuan Li did not explain. His long spear swept over again. Yi Hao hurriedly defended himself, but the more he fought, the more passive he became. Gradually, he was forced to the edge of the arena. If this continued, he would be out of bounds. On the high platform, Ling Junyun was a little stupefied. She thought, isn't this Yuan Li a member of the Yuan clan? Why is he so deadly? On the other side, Ying Luan was also a little confused. Looking at Yuan Shu, whose face was filled with killing intent, he instantly understood and muttered to himself. It seems that the development of the matter has exceeded Yuan Shu's control. At the same time, his entire body tensed up as he secretly accumulated strength. He stared closely at the constantly dodging figure in the arena. Yuan Shu put his foot on the table and yelled at Qin Yunji. Qin Yunji, what is the meaning of this? You dare to steal from the Yuan clan? Qin Yunji chuckled and said, Yuan Shu, you're wrong. Yuan Li isn't a member of your Yuan clan. How could I steal someone from your Yuan clan? Also, I was just trying to reason with Yuan Li. This is his own choice. When Yuan Shu heard this, he turned around and stared at Zhixian angrily. Zhixian hurriedly knelt down and said softly, Young master, this has nothing to do with me. Yuan Shu thought about it and then understood. He looked at the situation in the arena and kicked the wine jug off the table. Before the wine jug reached the arena, it fell to the ground with another jug. Yuan Shu's undulating chest slowly calmed down and he sat quietly on the chair. Qin Yunji retracted his foot and smiled. Yuan Li, this is right. The show has just begun, don't be in a hurry to leave. On the arena, although Yi Hao didn't know that Yuan Li had joined the Qin clan, just from his spear techniques that wanted to kill people, Yi Hao was able to deduce something. Thus, he swung his sword to block Yuan Li's spear and stood at the edge of the arena, roaring, Yuan Li, are you crazy? Yuan Li's gloomy face gradually relaxed. Then, he laughed loudly and said, I must be crazy to agree to such a stupid request. Yuan Li lowered his spear and smiled. You are only a 7th-level Spirit Emperor, how can you ask me, a 9th-level Spirit Emperor, to surrender without a fight? He, Yuan Shu, is the crazy one. Before he finished speaking, the spear was like a poisonous snake that went straight for Yi Hao's head. Yi Hao's body moved slightly. Although he dodged Yuan Li's fatal attack, he left a string of blood in the air. Yuan Shu withdrew his spear and touched the blood on the spear tip. He put it in his mouth and laughed, ha ha ha, why? Why are you the only one who can win? Why are you the only one who can marry Princess Ling? If I give Princess Ling to a trash like you, can you protect Princess Ling? Yuan Shu held the spear with both hands and slammed it on the ground. Then, the spear left Yuan Li's hand and drilled into the ground. Then, it rushed out from where Yi Hao was standing. Yi Hao raised his leg and used his sword to block it. Before Yi Hao could stabilize his body, the spear returned to Yuan Li's hand. Yuan Li immediately appeared beside Yi Hao and swept the spear out. Bang! 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 Yi Hao smashed 3 times on the stage, leaving 3 bloody marks on it at the same time. Yuan Li stood still and sneered. Look at you now, a trash who can only use external objects. How can you be the champion of the Heavenly Street contest and enter the ancestral worship ground? How can you marry Princess Ling? Dream on, trash. On the high platform, Yuan Shu's face was gloomy. If it weren't for the fact that the world was watching this competition, he would have killed his way into the arena and cut Yuan Li, this traitor, into pieces. Yi Hao winning was an important part of his plan. Now, it seemed like it was going to be ruined by Yuan Li. How could he not be angry? Qin Yunji admired Yuan Li. If Yuan Li won, his Qin clan would do everything in their power to protect him. Yi Hao got up from the ground with difficulty and asked, You join the Qin clan? Yuan Li shrugged and sneered. I just feel that what the Qin clan said makes sense. Why should I, a 9th-level Spirit Emperor, admit defeat to trash like you? You're a member of the Yuan clan, so am I. Moreover, with your strength, you can't protect the Spirit Princess. Yi Hao laughed. It was a mocking laugh. You say I can't, so can you? Yuan Li looked at Yi Hao's red eyes that were filled with mockery and was burning with rage. He directly appeared in front of Yi Hao and kicked Yi Hao's not very handsome face. Yi Hao's entire body quickly spun in the air. Then, he appeared beside Yi Hao and kicked again. Bang bang bang. Yi Hao was kicked a total of 36 times. The last kick sent Yi Hao into the arena, creating a large hole in the arena. Yuan Li held his spear with one hand and laughed as he landed on the arena. Chapter 1493. At the bottom of the crater, smoke filled the air. Yuan Li's right hand condensed and the black spear in his hand shot out. Hong! An explosion came from the bottom of the crater. Ling Junyun and the others' hearts trembled. The person lying at the bottom of the crater was Yi Hao. If Yi Hao died at Yuan Li's hands, their plan would be ruined. Ying Luan's tightly clenched fists suddenly loosened, revealing an expression of relief. He looked at the proud Yuan Li and the killing intent in his eyes faded. Yuan Li on the stage waved his hand and sneered, "You can't even withstand a single blow." As soon as his voice fell, the black spear returned to his hand. But as he laughed, his face stiffened because he didn't see any blood on the spear tip. His face suddenly changed and he dodged to the right. A red sword light brushed past his face and landed heavily on the ground. Yuan Li stabilized his body and turned around to look. Seeing that there was no one around, he couldn't help but grip his spear tightly and look around coldly. Spiritual array? Impossible. When you were fighting with me, I was always attacking and you were always dodging. You couldn't have had the chance to set up a spiritual array. Stop trying to act all mysterious over there. Hurry up and come out to die. Although Yuan Li's battle strength was extraordinary, he didn't notice Yi Hao's figure nor did he feel Yi Hao's aura. It was as if Yi Hao had disappeared into thin air. Therefore, he could only look around vigilantly and wait for his opponent to appear. Qin Yun on the stage seemed to have noticed something from the red sword light. He muttered, "It seems like he used some kind of treasure to temporarily hide in the void. But, even so, once the time is up, you won't be able to escape death." In the void, Yi Hao held a small round mirror in his hand. He stared at Yuan Li on the stage and let out a sigh of relief. In the beginning, he didn't expect Yuan Li to rely on the Qing family. Therefore, he was caught off guard. Originally, his cultivation was inferior to Yuan Li's, and he had lost the initiative, so the situation was very passive. He didn't even have the chance to arrange a spirit array, and he had almost died at Yuan Li's hands at the bottom of the pit. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the 5 broken realms formed a small void treading mirror, which allowed Yi Hao to hide in the void for a short period of time. That was how he managed to escape. As for the red sword light, it was indeed his doing. When he saw that Yuan Li had let down his guard, he wanted to launch a sneak attack. He didn't expect Yuan Li to dodge, so he could only wait quietly in the void. Yi Hao took out the heaven and earth bathing cauldron Elder Gu had given him and began to refine a 4th-grade healing elixir. Not long after, a perfect quality pill that was shining with golden light came out of the furnace. When Yi Hao took the pill, he decided to reveal his strength as an 8th-level spirit emperor and defeat Yuan Li completely. This was much better than dying at Yuan Li's hands. But right now, he didn't have much spirit qi left in his body, so he had to hurry up and recover. Yuan Li's cultivation wasn't high enough, so he naturally couldn't see Yi Hao hiding in the void. But he was patient and held his spear, standing quietly in the center of the stage. Half an incense's time passed, and suddenly, a dense spirit qi of heaven and earth came from the void. Yuan Shu, Ling Junyun, and the others were delighted, while Qin Yunji's expression darkened. Immediately after, a figure sitting cross-legged appeared at the edge of the stage. That person's aura was already at the 8th-level Spirit Emperor, but it was still a bit unstable. Qin Yunji slapped the table and stood up, shouting, "Yuan Li, he's breaking through, quickly kill him." Without needing Qin Yunji to say anything, Yuan Li also knew that Yi Hao had broken through and was stabilizing his cultivation. Then, his spear shook and like a black dragon, it went straight for Yi Hao's head. Yuan Shu stood up and scolded, "Qin Yunji, you broke the rules." Qin Yunji snorted and didn't reply. At this time, Ying Luan quickly stood up from his seat, revealing his half-step spirit emperor cultivation, and rushed towards the stage. Just as he was about to step onto the stage, Yuan forcibly stopped himself and stood below the stage. On the stage, the black dragon-like spear was only a few centimeters away from Yi Hao's throat. Just as it was about to pierce through, a hand full of calluses forcibly grabbed onto it. Yuan Li's expression darkened. He wanted to pull out his spear, but it didn't move at all. Suddenly, Yi Hao opened his eyes. His eyes were crimson red, as if there were flames burning within them. At the same time, the surrounding spirit chi of heaven and earth suddenly gathered together, gradually turning into a cloud of white mist that suddenly entered Yi Hao's body. Yi Hao's fluctuating cultivation also stabilized. Done. Yuan, who was standing below the stage, turned and left. Phew, it's good that you're fine. Ling Junyun, who was on the stage, let out a long breath. Ha ha. Yuan Shu laughed loudly and said, Qin Yunji, you still lost. Qin Yunji's gaze was sinister as he stared at Yi Hao, who had ruined his plans time and time again. Yi Hao smiled as he looked at Yuan Li, who was about to retreat, and asked, You want the spear? I'll give it to you. Without waiting for Yuan Li's reply, Yi Hao directly pushed out his palm, causing Yuan Li's figure to frantically retreat, only stopping after he was dozens of meters away. Yi Hao stood up, pulled out his sword, and smiled. Sorry, I suddenly had an epiphany during the battle with you. Then, with the help of some treasures from the Yuan mansion, I was lucky enough to break through to the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm. That's why I was delayed. Yuan Li shook his spear and snorted. So what if you're in the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm? You'll still die. Yi Hao couldn't stand it anymore, so he stabbed his sword into the ground and corrected him. You can't play with the spear like this. Come, I'll teach you. Before he finished speaking, Yi Hao punched Yuan Li's abdomen. Yuan Li exclaimed in his heart as he felt the pain. So fast, so fast. How is it possible? He's only in the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm. How is it possible? Yi Hao smiled faintly, took the black spear from Yuan Li's hand, and slapped it directly on Yuan Li's shoulder. Bang! This time, it was Yi Hao's turn to slap Yuan Li into the pit. Yi Hao looked at Yuan Li, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, and said quietly, When I was in the 7th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, I could defeat Qin Gao, who was half a step away from the Spirit Emperor realm. Now that I'm in the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, you, Yuan Li, are nothing. Roar. Yuan Li didn't want to give up, so he rushed out of the pit. However, just as his head passed through the pit, he was swept down by Yi Hao's spear, and the entire arena shook. Yuan Li stood up and rushed up again. Yi Hao held the spear and slapped it down again. After repeating this several times, Yuan Li, whose head was bleeding profusely, no longer struggled. He quietly laid at the bottom of the large pit, but his eyes, which were filled with tears of blood, still carried a trace of unwillingness as he looked at the azure sky. Yi Hao said faintly, There is no deep hatred between you and me, so I won't kill you. In the future, you're on your own. After saying this, Yi Hao gently threw the black spear to the bottom of the pit. Yi Hao pulled out his sword and sheathed it. Just as he was about to walk down the arena, Yuan Li's angry and unwilling voice sounded. Chaos Emperor System will continue to be updated on Qingdou. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend Qingdou. If you like the Chaos Emperor System, please bookmark. The Chaos Emperor System is updated the fastest in Qingdou. Chapter 1494. Yi Sangao, I hate you. I, Yuan Li, will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Yuan Li, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, took the black spear beside him and stabbed it into his heart with a smile. Hearing this, Yi Hao was slightly stunned. Then he smiled and said, Then you can go find Yi Sangao. Anyway, I'm called Yi Hao. Victory had been decided. Qin Yunji, who had a stomach full of anger, left. Behind him, the patriarchs of the other two families followed closely. Yuanli looked at Yi Hao with admiration and then left. Yuing Luan also left. As for the Han family's patriarch, Han Shi, he had already left because his disciple, Han Zhong, was heavily injured. Although the 6 great families had left, the Qing Shan Empire's Princess Ling, the Full Moon Empire's envoy, and the Raging Flame Empire's envoy were still there. They were the witnesses of Yi Hao winning. Yuchi Wei came to the stage with a big smile and loudly announced, "The victory of this competition has been decided. This year's Heavenly Street Convention has also come to an end. Our champion has been decided. He is the young man from the Tian Yuan Empire standing beside me, Yi San Gao. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the Heavenly Street Convention's champion quest. The reward is the Star Moon Emperor's Cultivation Technique Remnant Scroll." Before Yi Hao could check the reward, the system's voice sounded in his mind. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the main quest. The new main quest has been unlocked. The host can check it out yourself. After Yi Hao heard this, he did not rush to check it out. Instead, he looked at Yuchi Wei with a smile and asked, "Sir, is there anything else?" Yi Sangao, congratulations on becoming the champion. However, His Majesty will personally give out the rewards in 10 days in the Qingjing Hall. Therefore, you have to stay in the Qing Shan Imperial City for the next 10 days. Don't go anywhere. Someone will come and pick you up in 10 days. Yes, thank you, sir. After this battle, the name and portrait of the champion of the Heavenly Street Convention, Yi San Gao, spread throughout the ancient demon realm. Tian Yuan New City. Hu Sanyang held a portrait in her hand. It was Yi Hao. She passed the portrait to everyone. After seeing it, everyone was extremely excited. This, Your Majesty really did it. His Majesty is too amazing. He actually became the champion of the Heavenly Street Convention. May the heavens bless us. Our Tian Yuan Empire will only become stronger and more prosperous in the future. Huyen Zhua, 1,000-pill-old ancestor, and the others were all amazed by Yi Hao. At the same time, they were very glad that they had followed the right person. But why is the name on it Yi Sangao? Zhou Dong held the portrait and asked in confusion. Suddenly, a cold voice was heard. Everyone looked up and saw a cold-faced woman slowly walking towards them. Behind her was a tall man. "Yi is so smart. Haha." Zhou Dong immediately laughed and praised when he saw who it was. The rest of the people also greeted Yi and Hong Yen one by one. Hu Sanyang looked at the cold-faced woman and thought back to a while ago when this woman came to find her with a dragon-shaped jade pendant. She had to admit that this woman was not only beautiful, but also very powerful. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was the strongest person in the city. However, Hu Sanyang always felt that Yi was hiding many things in her heart. These things more or less affected Yi's cultivation. Otherwise, Yi's cultivation would only be stronger than it was now. Shi and Yin Xinshin had thought of many ways to get Yi to speak, but they could not get her to speak. Suddenly, a flurry of footsteps interrupted Hu Sanyang's thoughts. A soldier ran in a panic. Hu Yanzhua looked at him and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you so flustered?" The soldier hurriedly said, "Sirs, bad news. The Yueluan Empire sent an envoy. They said that they want our Tian Yuan Empire to bow down and become a vassal state of the Yueluan Empire." "What? How did the Yueluan Empire come so quickly? What are you afraid of? We'll deal with whatever comes our way. At worst, we'll fight them." "No, the Yueluan Empire is a 5th-rank empire. We're a 4th-rank empire. We can't win." In the court, everyone had their own opinions. However, they were roughly divided into 2 groups. One group wanted to go to war, while the other wanted peace. However, before Yi Hao left, he left many matters of Tian Yuan New City to Hu Sanyang to decide. Therefore, everyone looked at Hu Sanyang. Hu Sanyang felt a lot of pressure. She looked at Yin Xinshin and asked, "Xinshin, what do you think we should do?" Yin Xinshin did not have a clue. he said, "I'll listen to Sister Hu." Then, Hu Sanyang looked at Yi, who had been silent the whole time. Yi glanced at her and finally said, "I heard that the champion of the Heavenly Street meeting can marry the only child of the Green Mountain Emperor, Princess Ling." "What?" Yin Xinshin and Hu Sanyang exclaimed at the same time. However, one of them exclaimed loudly, while the other whispered softly. Yi knew how the two of them felt about Yi Hao. She said, "Don't panic. Let me finish. If the young emperor really marries Princess Ling, it will be a good thing for us." "What's good about it?" Yin Xinshin was a little angry. Hu Sanyang rolled her eyes and said, "I understand what you mean. The Green Mountain Empire and the Yueluan Empire are both fifth-rank empires. As long as the young emperor marries Princess Ling, the Yueluan Empire will not let the Tianyuan Empire become a vassal state." "That's right," Yi agreed. Hu Sanyang took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I know what to do. Everyone, listen up. No war, no peace. Everything will wait for the young emperor to return. Our task now is to delay the messenger of the Yueluan Empire and wait for the young emperor to return." "Yes, we will wait for the young emperor to return," everyone agreed after receiving the order. Even though Yin Xinshin felt a little uncomfortable, she still cared about the big picture when it came to the survival of the empire. Her priority was to delay the messenger. Yi looked at the united scene in the imperial court and felt a lot more relieved. On a road 100 miles away from the new Tianyuan city, there was a caravan riding on a first-rank demonic beast, Fire Horse. In the middle of the caravan was an old man. The old man held a portrait in his hand. The person in the portrait was Yi Sangao, who had just won the Heavenly Street meeting. The old man looked at the portrait and laughed while stroking his beard. "Haha, this kid is indeed my disciple. He really makes me proud." Then, the old man put away the portrait and ordered, "Everyone, hurry up. Find a village to rest before dark." Yes. The surrounding cultivators and alchemists all agreed. Chapter 1495. In a small town at the border of the Danzong Empire, there was a group of 1,000 people. The leader of the group, a man and a woman, each held a portrait and sat in the inn, looking at it silently. In the end, it was the man with a lively personality who broke the deadlock and said, "Is the level of this Heavenly Street meeting so low? Can an 8th-level Spirit Emperor win? In my opinion, the level of this Heavenly Street meeting is getting worse and worse." The woman was silent, staring at the portrait in her hand. "Humph, in my opinion, this kid's alchemy is just so. I really don't know why Elder Gu likes him." This time, the woman didn't remain silent. She said coldly, "Alchemy is different from cultivation. Don't forget that he is young, but he is already a 4th-level alchemist." The man didn't care at all and said, "So what? We have been a 4th-level alchemist for a long time. It's time to move forward." The woman didn't refute. She nodded silently and said, "Yes, it's time to move forward." In an inn in the Green Jade district of the imperial city of Green Mountain, Yi Hao, who had just finished the battle and won the Heavenly Street meeting, pushed open the door of the inn with exhaustion. As soon as he walked in, he saw Wu Wenyong, Zhu Gui, Xiang Chong, Lu Fang and Huang Fu Duan smiling at him. "What's wrong, you guys?" Yi Hao asked with a smile. "We all watched the last battle. It was a beautiful victory," Wu Wenyong said as he walked over and put his hand on Yi Hao's shoulder. Yes, young master is unparalleled in the world. The sword move you used to defeat Qingao was really cool. It disabled him instantly. And that Yuanli was no match for you at all. He was really powerful." A wave of flattery came to him. Yi Hao said with a smile, "Okay, I know you guys are worried about me. I'm fine. Don't worry. I'm just a little tired." "Okay, as long as you're fine. We'll go out first." Before leaving, Yi Hao put his right hand on Wu Wenyong's shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry. I'll do what I promised you." Wu Wenyong's body trembled visibly, But he quickly regained his composure and walked out of the room with Zhu Gui and Huang Fu Duan. As for Xiang Chong and Lu Fang, Yi Hao had other missions for them. After handing over the mission, the two of them disappeared from the room. Yi Hao sat on the bed, closed his eyes and rested for a while. Only then did he take out the reward for completing the main mission after much difficulty. Yi Hao looked at the two palm-sized jade panels in his hands and asked softly, "Is the Spirit Heaven Emperor Realm's cultivation technique inside?" The system's familiar voice rang in Yi Hao's mind. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Everyone says that the Star Moon Emperor is one of the top rankers of the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm, but in reality, he has already entered the Saint King realm. It's just that he likes the title of Emperor, so everyone mistakenly thinks that his cultivation technique is the cultivation technique of the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Yi Hao rubbed his chin and said, "In that case, this cultivation technique is actually not from the Spirit Heavenly Emperor realm, but from the Saint King realm." That's right. The rewards from the main quest are much more generous than the rewards from side quests. Haha, then I've made a fortune. Yi Hao laughed heartily. He couldn't wait to open one of the jade-colored panels. A stream of cryptic words suddenly surged into his mind. Then, he saw 4 silver-white sheets of paper floating in front of him. This is the cultivation technique of the Star Moon Emperor, Star Moon Change? Yi Hao took the first silver-white piece of paper and carefully caressed it. A domineering feeling of holding the stars in his hand and supremacy came over. The cryptic words on the paper suddenly floated up, and then continuously surrounded Yi Hao's body. Yi Hao also gradually understood the words written on this silver-white piece of paper. Yi Hao unconsciously closed his eyes and emptied his mind. Suddenly, he felt that his soul had wandered outside the heavens, and his body was in a star. He looked at the stars that were shining with a silver-white light, and couldn't help but extend his palm. A huge star rapidly shrank and came to the center of his palm. He placed the shrunken star to the side and extended his hands. Then 2 more stars rapidly shrank. He kept experimenting like this several times, and the result was the same. Gradually, Yi Hao felt that he could hold the sun, moon, and stars in his heart, and a bold and unrestrained feeling gushed out. And some subtle changes were also happening to his body. Spots of white light kept flashing in Yi Hao's body, and the number of times they flashed increased. In the end, the white light stopped flashing and emitted a cold silver-white light. This is the power of the stars entering the body? Xiao Bao carefully observed the changes in Yi Hao's body and was a little surprised. He said, "How long has it been? This guy has actually reached the entry level and started to draw the power of the stars into his body to forge his body. What a monster!" After an unknown period of time, Yi Hao suddenly felt a little tired, so he slowly opened his eyes. At this time, there were more and more white spots in his body, and the silver-white light emitted by his whole body became stronger and more dazzling. Yi Hao also noticed some changes in his body and couldn't help but feel puzzled. The system that named itself Xiao Bao said, "You have comprehended the first chapter of the changes of the stars and moon. You have reached the entry level." Yi Hao's mind moved, and the dazzling silver-white light disappeared. He said happily, "The changes of the stars and moon is to draw the power of the stars into one's body, and then convert the power of the stars into spiritual power for one's own use. The first chapter is to draw the power of the stars to forge one's body. As the power of the stars increases, one's body will become stronger and stronger." That's right. The owner of this technique used to have the constitution of the Holy King. That means I can also have the constitution of the Holy King. Then, attacks below the level of the Holy King won't even be enough to tickle me. Yi Hao's mind moved, and he put away the silver-white paper. He murmured, "I thought this changes of the stars and moon would be very difficult. Looks like it is very simple." The so-called body-forging chapter of the changes of the stars and moon is to draw the power of the stars into the 49 major acupoints in the body. One cycle is one cycle, and to strengthen one's body, one has to do 7 cycles a day. You just did one cycle, and your body can't take it anymore. So, you are still very far away from the constitution of the Holy King. According to the records, when the changes of the stars and moon are completed, and you have the constitution of the Holy King, the stars in the sky will vibrate violently with every breath you take. Wherever you go, starlight will shine, and people will worship you. That is the true supreme posture. Yi Hao began to yearn for that scene. He sighed and said, I am still very far away from the constitution of the Holy King. However, as my cultivation improves, the time it takes to complete one cycle will be shortened. Sooner or later, I will be able to complete 7 cycles a day and achieve the posture of the Holy King. Chapter 1496. Xiao Bao suddenly found it funny and said, Achievement my ass. Yi Hao retorted, What do you mean by that? Are you looking down on me? It's not that I'm looking down on you, but did you realize that there's only the upper half of the star and moon transformation? Hearing this, Yi Hao took out 4 more pieces of silver-white paper. His expression was solemn as he asked, Where is the second half? When the Star-Moon Emperor fell, in order to prevent the enemy from finding his cultivation technique, he separated the 2 cultivation techniques. Xiao Bao paused for a moment before continuing, I think he must have placed the second half of the cultivation technique in the tomb. Tomb? Yi Hao was puzzled and asked, Then where is the tomb of the Star-Moon Emperor now? Yi Hao wanted to become stronger. He wanted to protect the Tianyuan Empire. He wanted to save Bingyi, and the Star-Moon Emperor's cultivation technique could make him stronger. Therefore, he had to obtain the second half of the cultivation technique. Don't worry, take a look at the current main quest. Hearing this, Yi Hao entered the system and looked at his current main quest. Suddenly, he was stunned on the spot. This was because the current main quest of the system was to obtain the inheritance of the Star-Moon Emperor in the tomb of the Star-Moon Emperor that would open in 2 months. After completing the quest, he would be able to obtain a chance to summon a divine rank general. Yi Hao exited the system and muttered to himself, It seems that in 2 months, the tomb of the Star-Moon Emperor will appear. At that time, I can enter the tomb to search for the second half of the cultivation technique. Furthermore, if I complete the quest, I can even obtain a divine rank general. Yi Hao's eyes suddenly burned with passion. He had to complete this quest. Yi Hao opened the other jade-colored panel and discovered that it recorded a Spirit Sky Emperor Realm Light Body technique. It was the same as the Star and Moon transformation. There was only the upper half and no lower half. However, even if it was a remnant, it was enough for him. In the next 10 days, other than cultivating these 2 remnant scrolls, Yi Hao studied array formations and refined pills. Time flew by. On this day, Yi Hao was dressed in black as usual, waiting silently in the inn. Before long, Wu Wenyong walked in joyfully. Third High, there are people outside. They say they want to bring you into the palace. The Emperor of Green Mountain wants to reward you. Alright, I got it. Therefore, Yi Hao left the inn and entered the palace in a carriage pulled by a flaming horse with the emissary sent by the palace. Along the way, Yi Hao carefully sized up Yuchi Wei who had come to greet them. He softly asked, May I ask Lord Yuchi, will the people from the various great clans be attending this court assembly? Yuchi Wei smiled, That's natural. Not only is this a reward for young Master Yi, it's also the first time His Majesty is presiding over court this year. Thus, the leaders of the major clans and some important ministers will be there. Yi Hao looked at Yuchi Wei's happy expression and probed, I heard that His Majesty has been in a coma. Suddenly, Yuchi Wei became furious and shouted, Third High Yi, how dare you criticize His Majesty? Yi Hao bitterly smiled, Lord Yuchi misunderstands. I became the champion of the Heavenly Street meeting. In theory, I will marry Princess Ling. In this way, the Emperor of Green Mountain is also my father. As the Emperor's son-in-law, what's wrong with worrying about my father? Yuchi Wei looked at Yi Hao's sharp tongue and sighed. That's true. In the future, you will be the Emperor's son-in-law of my Green Mountain Empire. There's no harm in telling you. It's quite a coincidence. His Majesty was still in a coma 2 days ago, but he suddenly woke up yesterday and said he wanted to personally preside over today's court assembly. Yi Hao carefully asked, "How is His Majesty's mind these 2 days?" Although he's awake, he's still a bit dispirited. Along the way, Yi Hao learned a lot from chatting with Yuchi Wei. He stood on the stone steps outside the hall and looked at the huge and magnificent hall of diligent government. He suddenly had a bad feeling. The Emperor of Green Mountain might not have much time left. Summon Third Hai Yi, enter the hall to receive your order. An extremely ear-piercing sound came from the main hall. Yi Hao collected his thoughts and straightened his expression. He walked up the white jade stairs step by step and walked into the hall at a moderate pace. There were many people standing in the hall, but they didn't stand according to the order of the civil and military officials. Instead, they stood on both sides of the hall according to the 2 factions of the 6 great clans. Yi Hao walked into the resplendent hall. He lifted his head and saw an old man with white hair and beard sitting on the golden dragon throne. He looked a little dispirited, but he was actually glowing with vitality. Below the old man stood a young woman in gorgeous clothes and exquisite makeup. Below them were the 2 factions led by the Yuan clan and the Qin clan. The position where Yi Hao stood when he entered the hall was right between the 2 factions. Yi Hao looked at the old man on the dragon throne and knelt down. Third Hai Yi of the Tianyuan Empire greets the Emperor of Green Mountain. The old man coughed softly and said, "Rise." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yi Hao stood up and looked into the old man's eyes that were full of vicissitudes. Suddenly, an overwhelming pressure came toward him. Although it wasn't enough to suffocate him, it still made him break out in a cold sweat. The old man asked softly, "Your Third Hai Yi?" Yi Hao was still calm in the face of the old man's pressure. He said in a deep voice, "Yes. You're the champion of this year's Heavenly Street meeting. Yes. You want to marry my only daughter, the only princess of the Green Mountain Empire, Princess Ling." Hearing that, Yi Hao hesitated. He glanced at the young woman below the old man and replied, "Yes. According to the rules of the Heavenly Street meeting, the winner can marry Princess Ling. Your Majesty, you're questioning me like this. Are the rules not valid?" The Emperor of Green Mountain didn't say anything. He stared at Yi Hao, as if he wanted to find a trace of panic in this ordinary young man's eyes. However, he only saw calmness and composure. The old man retracted his aura and gaze and said loudly, "What a good Third Hai Yi. You really are a young man. I'm old. The old man seemed to have thought of something and felt a trace of sadness. Yi Hao looked at the ground quietly. He didn't break the silence in the hall. It wasn't just Yi Hao. Everyone in the hall was the same. Yuan Shu and Qin Yunji could be disrespectful to Ling Junyun because Ling Junyun was weaker than them and was of the same generation as them. However, they couldn't be disrespectful to the old man on the dragon throne. Not only had that old man gone through life and death with their father, he was also the #1 person in the Green Mountain Empire. He was the protector of the Green Mountain Empire and a spirit emperor. Yuchi Wei coldly glanced at the people of the 6 great clans. He couldn't hide the smile on his face. Chapter 1497. He had said that as long as the Qingshan Emperor woke up, the people of the 6 great clans would have to behave themselves and not do anything. This was not a joke. It was true. Ling Junyun suddenly coughed softly. The old man came back to his senses and looked at the people below with a smile. "Look at me. I'm getting old. I'm indeed forgetful. Ling Junyun reminded him. Father, it's time to get down to business. The old man laughed. That's right, it was time to get down to business. Then, he said in a deep voice, Yi Sangao, come forward and receive your title. Yi Hao took a step forward and knelt on the ground with his head touching the ground. Yi Sangao is the champion of this heavenly street meeting. Therefore, Yi Sangao is bestowed the position of pillar of Qingshan Empire. He will be rewarded with 10,000 hectares of land and a mansion. He will marry Princess Ling on another day. Pillar of Qingshan Empire. Everyone was in an uproar. What right does an outsider have to be the pillar of Qingshan Empire? That's right. He's just a young man who doesn't know his place. How can he be the pillar of Qingshan Empire? What right does he have? Whispers could be heard below the stage. The old man chuckled and asked, Yi Sangao, you haven't replied yet. Are you dissatisfied with my reward? Yi Hao hurriedly said, Your Majesty, it's not that I'm dissatisfied. It's just that Yi Sangao can't be the pillar of Qingshan Empire. Your Majesty, please be careful. If I say you can be it, you can be it. Do you understand? Yes, Your Majesty. Yi Hao stood up and retreated to the side. The old man coldly scanned the people below the stage. No one dared to look him in the eye. The old man said with a glowing face, Also, after Yi Sangao and Princess Ling get married, he will be a member of Qingshan Empire. Therefore, he can be the pillar of Qingshan Empire. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Everyone below the stage knelt down and said in a deep voice, I have one more thing to announce. Your Majesty, please speak. The old man stood up. Ling Junyun hurriedly stepped forward. The old man held Ling Junyun's hand and stood in the center of the hall. He said, My health has been deteriorating these years. I only have one daughter. Therefore, I've decided to pass the position of Qingshan Empire's Princess Ling Junyun. Your Majesty, please reconsider. His Majesty's body is still strong. There's no need to be so anxious. Your Majesty, Princess Ling is a woman after all. You can't do that. You will be mocked by other countries. The ministers kneeling on the ground tried to dissuade him. Ah! The old man threw his head back and laughed. Next, a supreme atmosphere of power slowly spread out from his body, pressing down on everyone in the hall to the point of suffocation. He looked at the people prostrating on the ground and said, My words are the imperial edict. When Princess Ling returns from the ancestral worship ceremony, we will hold the coronation ceremony. Yes. Everyone had no choice but to nod in agreement. The old man returned to the dragon throne. He still didn't retract his spirit monarch aura. He looked at everyone and said loudly, Yuan Shu, Qin Yunji, Yuing Luan, Han Shi, Huang Fu Yunji, and Hao Gui, the 6 of you come forward to receive your orders. Hearing this, the leaders of the 6 families stepped forward together. I confer upon you the 6 pillar nations, the same rank as Yi San. After Princess Ling ascends the throne, the 7 of you will assist Princess Ling in governing the Qingshan Empire. Do you understand? Yi Hao also knelt with the leaders of the 6 families and said together, We understand. Ling Junyun looked at the old man whose face was getting redder and redder. Her eyes were already wet. Below the stage, Yu Qiwei also fell into silence. The old man's current appearance was probably reaching the end of his life. The old man suddenly felt tired. He waved his hand and said, Princess Ling, Yi Zhuguo will stay. And the court. Yes. Thus, the last court session of the Qingshan Empire personally presided by the old man came to an end. This court session also sent 2 messages to the world. One was that Princess Ling was about to become the first empress since the founding of the empire. The other was that, other than the 6 pillar nations, there was another Yi Sangao, Yi Zhuguo. Soon, only the family was left in the hall. Ling Junyun couldn't stop the tears in her eyes anymore. She threw herself into the old man's arms. The old man gently stroked Ling Junyun's face and said with a smile, What are you crying for? You should be happy. Imperial Father finally doesn't have to lie on the bed like a living corpse. He also doesn't have to run around the palace naked like a madman. He also doesn't have to be like a child, hugging his head and crying out in pain. Imperial Father. Ling Junyun touched the old man's skinny back and said with a choked voice, "Don't leave me, okay? I'm scared." The old man seemed to be more and more energetic. He said, "Humans will eventually die. Even the legendary Saint King can't escape death. It's good that he's dead. He won't have to suffer in this world." The old man waved at Yi Hao, who was not far away. Yi Hao hesitated for a moment. Looking at the old man who was on the verge of death, he still walked forward. The old man looked at Yi Hao and said seriously, "Yi San Gao, I have something to ask of you." Ling Junyun was stunned. In her memory, the old man had never begged anyone. Yi Hao was silent and didn't say anything. The old man smiled and said, "You're so smart. You definitely know what I'm talking about. Actually, I didn't want to drag you into this. However, you're already deeply involved. I'm afraid it's too late for you to leave." Yi Hao nodded silently. "You're right. Of course, you won't help me for free." The old man clapped his hands. A warrior in silver armor suddenly appeared behind Yi Hao. Yi Hao was shocked. Just as he was about to attack, the old man stopped him. "Silver armor, from today onwards, he's your new master." Silver armor nodded silently. Then, he knelt in front of Yi Hao. Not only was Yi Hao shocked, Ling Junyun was even more shocked. She didn't understand what her imperial father was doing. The old man explained, "I have 2 guards. One is gold armor, which I've already given to Junyun. The other is silver armor, which you're looking at now. They're both spirit monarch experts. They can save your life at a critical moment. As long as you agree, silver armor will be yours." Yi Hao looked at the warrior in silver armor. He was a little tempted. A spirit monarch expert was a life-saving talisman for him now. He knew that he would encounter many dangers in the future. However, his current strength wasn't enough for him to survive these dangers. Seeing Yi Hao's hesitation, the old man took out an interspatial ring and threw it to Yi Hao. He said unhappily, "This is our imperial family's private treasury. There are many treasures inside. They're all yours. How about it?" Yi Hao took the ring and made up his mind. He said seriously, "I agree. Don't worry, I'll definitely do it." "Ha ha ha, good." The old man suddenly leaned back on the chair. After laughing a few times, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. Ling Junyun, who didn't know what was going on, saw her imperial father leaning back on the throne and falling asleep. She lost control and started to cry. Yi Hao walked over and hugged her. He said calmly, "It's okay. He's just asleep." Chapter 1498. As the sun set in the west, Ling Junyun and Yi Hao stood in the tallest pavilion of the imperial palace. Ling Junyun suddenly felt rather emotional. She asked, "Don't you think our Qingshan Empire is like this slowly setting sun?" Yi Hao said frankly, "No." Ling Junyun laughed self-deprecatingly. "That's true. Isn't this slowly setting sun my Ling clan? How can it be the Qingshan Empire?" Yi Hao did not answer. His expression was rather grave. This was because he had just learned a secret from the space ring. Moreover, this secret was rather shocking. "Hey, what's wrong? What are you thinking about?" Ling Junyun looked at the dazed Yi Hao and said, "You just accepted so many benefits from my father. Why aren't you telling me what you promised my father?" "I can't tell you right now. Tisk, you're pretending to be mysterious." Yi Hao watched as the setting sun gradually disappeared into the darkness. He said, "You didn't tell your father about your plan?" "No, I'm afraid he'll worry." Yi Hao took in a deep breath and muttered, "I think so too. If you tell him, you probably won't be able to go to the ancestral worship in 3 days." "What did you say?" Ling Junyun did not hear him clearly and asked. "Nothing." Yi Hao fell silent for a while, then asked, the ancestral worship in 3 days. Will the plan not change? Of course. Have you changed your mind? Don't you want to know why Yuan Shu kept you alive but didn't kill you? Don't you want to carry out your responsibility as a pillar of the empire? That's not it. Yi Hao thought for a while, then said, since that's the case, I'll go back first. It'll be bad if the people of the Immortal Cloud Pavilion find out. Ling Junyun replied indifferently. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and quietly looked at the darkening sky. Yi Hao hesitated, but he said nothing. He then left the imperial palace. Along the way, Yi Hao kept thinking about the parchment left behind by the Green Mountain Emperor in his space ring. In the end, he sighed deeply and murmured, "Sigh, it really is a hot potato. Whatever, let's just take it one step at a time." When Yi Hao returned to the inn, he did not find Wu Wenyong. Instead, he found the unconscious Zhu Gui and Huang Fuduan in his room. Yi Hao hurriedly took out 2 healing pills and fed them to them. Then, he circulated his spiritual energy to heal them. Not long after, the 2 of them slowly woke up. Yi Hao asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" Zhu Gui said weakly, "Just now, a group of men in black attacked us. After injuring the 2 of us, they took Wu Wenyong away." "What?" Yi Hao was shocked and asked, "Where are they?" "Before that group of black-clothed men left, they said that if you want to save someone, you have to go to the Cliff Brink Valley." Huang Fuduan's spirits were slightly better now as he looked at Yi Hao and said, "Broken Cliff Valley? It's not far from here. It seems like they came for me." Yi Hao helped the 2 of them to the bed and said, "You 2 stay here and wait for me to come back. Young Emperor, there are a few half-step spirit monarchs in that group. You have to be careful. Yes, and that group of people is very despicable. You have to be careful." "Okay, I know." After comforting the 2 of them, Yi Hao left the inn and went straight to the Qingyin district. That was because the Cliff Brink Valley was within the jurisdiction of the Qingyin district. The Cliff Brink Valley was an ancient battlefield. Many people had died there, so it had a very strong aura of death. Ordinary people did not dare to go there at all. However, that group of people went there directly after taking Wu Wenyong. It meant that they came prepared. However, Yi Hao did not have time to make more preparations. After all, the sooner he went, the less danger Wu Wenyong would be in. Along the way, Yi Hao used many teleportation formations. Finally, he arrived at the Cliff Brink Valley just as the sun was about to rise. There was a ruin in the center of the Cliff Brink Valley. On the ruin, there was a young man in blue with a dusty face. Around him, there were 10 masked men in black who were armed with dual sabers. The young man looked at the men in black and said, "Big brothers, I don't think I have offended you. What is the meaning of this?" The men in black did not respond. The young man continued, "Big brothers, let me go." After pleading in vain, the young man said with a fierce expression, "Let me tell you. My brother is the champion of the Sky Street Conference. He is the pillar of the Qingshan Empire. If you don't let me go, you will be dead when he comes." Bang! One of the men in black could not take it anymore. He kicked the stomach of the young man in blue heavily. Wu Wenyong cried out in pain and did not dare to speak anymore. After an unknown period of time, a white mist suddenly rose in the surroundings. Then, a black figure slowly walked out of the white mist. Wu Wenyong looked at the person and was delighted. He said, "San Gao, why are you here?" Yi Hao held the Wu Dao sword and looked at the men in black coldly. He said in a deep voice, "Let him go." The men in black remained silent. They looked at each other as if they were confirming Yi Hao's identity. Yi Hao said loudly, "I am Yi San Gao. I am also the person you are waiting for. Now that I am here, let him go." "Brother San Gao, don't underestimate the enemy. Some of them are half-step spirit monarchs." Wu Wenyong's face was kicked again as soon as he finished speaking. Yi Hao was furious. He held his sword and went forward. The 10 men in black moved at the same time. They pulled out their sabers and attacked Yi Hao fiercely. While Yi Hao was fighting with the men in black, he carefully observed their clothes and movements. When he was fighting with one of them, he suddenly took off the man's mask and found that the man's eyes were empty and lifeless. He was shocked. Then, the corner of his mouth curled up and he started fighting again. At this time, Wu Wenyong in blue stood up silently. He patted the dust off his body and left the ruins. He walked out of the cliff valley and came to a tall mountain near the cliff valley. At this time, a rich man in brocade clothes was standing on the mountain. There were also many bodyguards around the rich family. These bodyguards were all equipped with dual blades and had their faces covered. Wu Wenyong walked to the rich man's side and said softly, "Young Master Shu, Yi Hao has been lured here. My mission is complete. Can you fulfill your promise now?" Yuan Shu turned around and smiled faintly. "Wu Wenyong, you did well. You didn't waste your face. It's all thanks to young Master Shu." Yuan Shu smiled. "Back then, in order to change your face and send you to the Wu residence in Lishan City, I spent a lot of money. Fortunately, I have completed your mission. Young Master Shu, Yuan Shu slapped Wu Wenyong's face. Yuan Shu waved his hand in disdain and said impatiently, "Noisy." Wu Wenyong covered his face and remained silent. "I don't want to see your face again. You know what to do." Chapter 1499. Wu Wenyong looked down at the ground and said, "I understand. I won't appear in front of you again." "Okay." Yuan Shu nodded with satisfaction and smiled. "Okay, you can go now. He will bring you to see your family." Immediately after, a guard stood out from behind Yuan Shu. That guard bowed respectfully, then turned and left. Wu Wenyong hesitated, but he still asked, "Young Master Shu, I have another question. What will happen to Yi Hao?" Slap. Another slap came, but this time, it was much fiercer than before. Wu Wenyong was sent flying. Yuan Shu looked at Wu Wenyong, who stood up silently, and said sarcastically, "This is not something you can know. You should take care of yourself first." Wu Wenyong cupped his hands and said expressionlessly, "I know." Then, Wu Wenyong left with the guard. After Wu Wenyong left, Ying Yi, who was beside Yuan Shu, asked, "Young master, you let that person go just like that?" Yuan Shu smiled evilly. "Leave? It's easy to leave me, Yuan Shu. Just die." Ying Yi suddenly felt a chill. He shrunk his neck and didn't say anything else. Just as Wu Wenyong and Mo Wuji returned to the Qing Luo district, two figures quietly followed behind them. Broken Cliff Valley, on the ruins. The flying sword in Yi Hao's hand flew. Two men in black who wanted to sneak up on him were killed by the flying sword. Yi Hao looked coldly at the remaining 8 men in black and asked, "Who are you?" The only response he got was silence and 16 battle swords. Yi Hao shouted in a low voice, and all the spiritual power in his body gushed out. Yi Hao, who was at the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, was not afraid of the man in black who was half a step away from the Spirit Emperor realm. If Yi Hao was a 7th level Spirit Emperor, it would be difficult for him to face a half-step Spirit Emperor. But now, he was an 8th level Spirit Emperor, and he didn't use the power of the stars. If it wasn't for his fear, these people would have been killed by his sword. From the looks of that person earlier, Yi Hao was certain that these people were from the Immortal Cloud Pavilion. As for why Yuan Shu had gone to such great lengths to lure him here, he would find out soon enough. Yi Hao pulled out his scarlet Wu Dao sword from the chest of a black-clothed man. Looking at the remaining 7 black-clothed men, he murmured, "It seems like I haven't done enough. Otherwise, how could Yuan Shu be so calm?" The phoenix dance of the 9 heavens reappeared, but this time, it took away a half-step spirit monarch black-clothed man. On a high mountain. When Ying Yi saw this scene, he felt a little distressed. The elites of the Shadow Division had come out in full force this time. They had sent all the half-step spirit emperors. 2 of them had just been killed by Yi Hao, which cast a shadow over the already bad situation of the Shadow Division. Yi said, "Young Master Shu, if we wait any longer, I'm afraid all the elites of my department will be wiped out." Yuan Shu looked at him with disdain. "Look at you. If our plan succeeds, the entire Qinshan Empire will be ours, not to mention the few of you." Young Master Shu is right. Although Yi agreed on the surface, the corner of his mouth was twitching. Yuan Shu stretched and said, "But you're right. I'm in need of people right now. I can't let him kill all my elite." Young Master Shu is right. Yi smiled. Yuan Shu waved his hand. Suddenly, the fog in the valley dissipated. Then, waves of very heavy death chi quickly gathered at the ruins in the center of the valley. Not long after, a black cloud slowly formed above the ruins. Yuan Shu looked at the huge dark cloud and murmured, I've carefully chosen this valley for you. If you want to maximize the effectiveness of your Cub Gu Heartstone, you can't do without the death energy here. It won't be long before you become a walking corpse that only listens to my orders." Then, Yuan Shu took out a palm-sized jade Buddha stone and held it in his hand. Then, he led everyone down the mountain. In the ruins, Yi Hao saw the huge black cloud above his head. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Then, he felt a little dizzy. His consciousness was a little blurry. He stood there in a daze. His eyes gradually lost focus. At this time, the black-clothed people around him didn't make a move. Instead, they spread out to prevent Yi Hao from running away. After some time, Yi Hao suddenly felt his eyelids grow heavy. He quietly closed his eyes. Just as Yi Hao closed his eyes, Yuan Shu and the others appeared. At this time, Yi Hao's body was surrounded by a black death chi. At the same time, the jade Buddha stone on Yi Hao's waist suddenly lit up. It seemed to be resonating with the jade Buddha stone in Yuan Shu's hand. Yuan Shu didn't rush forward. He looked at the unconscious Yi Hao and smiled. "Do you know why I used Wu Wenyong to lure you here? Because you possess scarlet eyes, ordinary bewitchment techniques will not be of much use to you. If I want to firmly grasp you in my hands, I will need to set up a spiritual array and use the dense death aura here to bewitch you and make you sink into oblivion. Only then can I make you completely lose your will. When the cloud above your head disappears, you'll become another Yi Hao." Slowly, the black cloud above Yi Hao's head became smaller and smaller. Meanwhile, the death chi on Yi Hao's body became more and more abundant. At this time, Yi looked at the sleeping Yi Hao and asked in confusion, "Sir, why do you have to bewitch him? Will he be able to open that place if he follows you to the ancestral ground?" Yuan Shu's expression suddenly became very serious. He said, "Before the old fart left, he said that only those with red eyes and my Dao sword can open that place. If I don't control Yi Hao, it will be very difficult to open that place. Our plan will also fail. My original intention was to take back my Dao sword and find someone to be the key. I didn't expect him to take it, so I could only set up Wu Wenyong as a pawn in Lishan City so that I can completely control this key today. Once we enter that place and take away that monster's spirit power, no one in the entire Qinshan Empire, no, the entire ancient demon realm, will be my match. After all, that monster used to be that person's mount." Yuan Shu's expression became gloomy. Then, he laughed loudly. Finally, the black cloud above Yi Hao's head disappeared. The death chi in the valley gathered on Yi Hao's body. Yuan Shu took out the jade Buddha stone and came before Yi Hao. The jade Buddha stone on Yi Hao's waist became brighter and brighter. At the same time, it floated up and spun around Yuan Shu's hand. It was as if it had seen its mother after many years. It was very excited. Chapter 1500. Yuan Shu held the jade Buddha stone and chanted a secret spell. Suddenly, the death chi around Yi Hao rushed into Yi Hao's body. Yuan Shu laughed and waited for Yi Hao to wake up. However, after waiting for a while, Yi Hao showed no signs of waking up. He couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. So, Yuan Shu handed the jade Buddha stone forward and said, "Strange, the death chi has all rushed into Yi Hao's body. Logically speaking, Yi Hao should have woken up." But Yuan Shu snapped his fingers and Yi Hao's closed eyes slowly opened. His pupils were still crimson red, but unlike before, his bright and spirited eyes had dimmed and become hollow. Yuan Shu smiled and said, "You're awake. Then let me see if you're completely under my control." Yuan Shu pointed at a man in black not far away and said with a sinister smile, "Kill him." Hearing this, Yi Hao, with his empty eyes, pulled out the Wu Dao sword from the ground. His body moved slightly and a large head appeared in Yi Hao's hand. At the same time, droplets of blood scattered in the air. The surrounding men in black were very calm about their companion's death, as if they were already used to it. Or perhaps they had also lost their own will and turned into walking corpses. Yuan Shu was very satisfied with Yi Hao's actions and asked, "What realm are you at now?" "8th level Spirit Emperor." Yi Hao's answer was very simple, but there was a hint of hoarseness in his words. "Who are you?" "Emperor of the Tianyuan Empire, Yi Hao." "What are you doing in the Qingshan Empire?" "Taking first place in the Heavenly Street Convention." After asking a few more questions, Yi Hao obediently answered them. Only then did Yuan Shu relax and tie the jade Buddha stone that was spinning in the air back to Yi Hao's waist. She took out the jade Buddha stone that contained her grandmother's Gu heart stone and placed it in front of Yi Hao. She said softly, "Remember, I am your master now. You have to do whatever I say. Do you understand?" Yi Hao nodded stiffly and said in a hoarse voice, "Yes, master." Yuan Shu nodded in satisfaction and asked, "Let me ask you, what did the Green Mountain Emperor say to you after he left you and Princess Ling behind?" "The Green Mountain Emperor asked me to protect his daughter, Princess Ling, and then gave me the royal treasury as a reward." Yuan Shu's eyes lit up as he said with a smile, "This old fox, the imperial family really does have some stocks. Where is that private treasury now?" Yi Hao took out a spatial ring and handed it to Yuan Shu. He said woodenly, "This spatial ring contains the imperial family's private treasury." Yuan Shu received the spatial ring and carefully inspected it. His smile widened. When Yuan Shu was inspecting the treasures in the spatial ring, Yi Hao's lips couldn't help but twitch. However, he concealed it very well, so no one noticed. Yuan Shu looked at the treasures, spiritual stones, and spiritual coins piled up like a mountain in the spatial ring. He couldn't help but say, "This old fox really did hide a lot of good stuff. But he never imagined that the royal treasury would end up in my hands, ha ha ha." Yuan Shu accepted the spatial ring and asked, "Is there anything else besides this?" "Nothing else." "Then how is the Green Mountain Emperor's health? Has he already passed away?" Yi Hao shook his head and said, "I don't know. The Green Mountain Emperor left after saying that." Yuan Shu's expression was rather grave. Yi walked over and said, "Young master, there's no need to worry about this. Now that the day of ancestral worship is near, we should focus on that matter. Since we've already confirmed that the Green Mountain Emperor won't participate in the ancestral worship, he won't interfere with our plan. When the time comes and our plan succeeds, why should we be afraid of a single Green Mountain Emperor?" Yuan Shu gently placed his hand on Yi's shoulder. He said, "You're right. Since that's the case, let's temporarily withdraw the people we've placed in the imperial palace. We'll focus all our attention on the ancestral worship." "Yes." With that, Yi disappeared from where he was. The Green Mountain District. Wu Wenyong followed the guard to a bustling street on the Green Mountain peak. Wu Wenyong carefully examined his surroundings. He discovered that this place was rather far from the Yuan Manor and the Celestial Cloud Pavilion. It seemed that his family wasn't locked up in the Celestial Cloud Pavilion. Thinking of this, he let out a sigh of relief. As he walked, he glanced behind him, intentionally or otherwise. After seeing two familiar figures, he felt much more at ease. However, when he thought of Yi Hao's situation, he became worried again. His name was Wu Wenyong, but he wasn't the real Wu Wenyong from Lishan City. When Yi Hao obtained the Wu Dao sword, Yuan Shu found him and used his family to threaten him to do something. That was to hide in the Wu Manor in Lishan City. He would do everything he could to get in touch with Yi Hao and stay by Yi Hao's side. Because Yuan Shu was certain that Yi Hao would pass by Lishan City on his way to the Green Mountain Imperial City, he planted such a chess piece. Wu Wenyong's original appearance wasn't like this. However, Yuan Shu had people change his appearance to make it easier for the mission. When he entered the Wu Manor in Lishan City, the young master of the Wu clan was already seriously ill and on the verge of death. His father was also bedridden. Therefore, after the young master of the Wu clan passed away, he replaced the real Wu Wenyong. At that time, he didn't attract anyone's attention. Everyone thought that he was the real young master of the Wu clan. After that, he stayed in the Wu Manor and secretly sent people to find out about Yi Hao's whereabouts. Finally, on the day Yi Hao entered the city, he purposely appeared at the entrance of the medicine pavilion, purposely brought Yi Hao into the underground auction house, purposely helped Yi Hao bid for the medicine and beauties, and purposely brought Yi Hao to participate in the alchemist convention. The reason he did all this was to make Yi Hao believe that he was the young master of the Wu Manor, Wu Wenyong. After old Master Wu passed away, Wu Wenyong naturally went with Yi Hao and accompanied Yi Hao to participate in the Heavenly Street convention. After that, when they arrived at the Green Mountain Imperial City, Wu Wenyong secretly went to the Celestial Cloud Pavilion to report Yi Hao's situation. After that, Yuan Shu gave him a good scolding and threatened him with the image of his family. He didn't allow him to enter the Celestial Cloud Pavilion without orders to prevent his whereabouts from being exposed. Yuan Shu also said that as long as he helped him complete this mission, he would release Wu Wenyong's family and let them reunite. Pretending to be captured by the members of the Shadow Department to attract Yi Hao's rescue was the last step Yuan Shu wanted him to complete. As long as he completed this mission, he would be able to reunite with his family. Wu Wenyong collected his thoughts and looked at the alleyways that were getting narrower and narrower. A blissful smile appeared on his face. He had finally waited for this day. Very soon, he would be able to reunite with his family. After following the guards of the Shadow Department through 7 or 8 alleyways, they finally stopped in front of a rundown temple. Chapter 1501. Wu Wenyong looked suspiciously at the ruined temple and asked, "Are my family members inside?" The guard glanced at Wu Wenyong and said impatiently, "Go in." Wu Wenyong hesitated, but he still pushed open the gate of the ruined temple. After Wu Wenyong entered the temple, the guard pulled out the 2 blades at his waist with a cold expression and followed closely behind him. Wu Wenyong walked through the courtyard of the ruined temple and arrived at the temple. He saw his parents and sister leaning against each other in ragged clothes under the statue of the ruined temple. Their faces were yellow and their hair was unkempt. Wu Wenyong's tears immediately streamed down. He cried out, "Father, Mother, where I've come to take you home." The 3 people under the statue did not show any joy. Instead, their eyes were wide open and their bodies trembled. Wu Wenyong saw fear in their black eyes, so he suddenly turned his head. A white light flashed before his eyes. Cliff Break Valley ruins. Yuan Shu rubbed the jade Buddhist stone in his hand, then turned to Yi Hao and said, "Okay, I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask. Wake up in 2 hours and return to the inn." "Yes, Pa." Yuan Shu snapped his fingers. Yi Hao's body trembled, and he fell unconscious again. Yuan Shu glanced at him with satisfaction, then left with his group. An hour later, Yi Hao slowly opened his eyes. Only after confirming that there was no one around did he yawn lazily. Yi Hao no longer had his wooden appearance from before. His somewhat empty eyes had completely recovered their clarity. Yi Hao frowned, constantly muttering, "Scarlet eyes? Ki." What kind of nonsense is this? But it sounds like Yuan Shu has made a lot of preparations for that day. Can we beat him with just the few of us? I think it's a little difficult. We should find another ally. Afterwards, Yi Hao took out the parchment in the spatial ring bestowed to him by the Azure Mountain Emperor. He murmured, "Fortunately, I took out this parchment, or else Yuan Shu would probably know about this secret." Yi Hao narrowed his eyes and said fiercely, "Yuan Shu, you took my interspatial ring today. In the future, I will make you pay back double." Yi Hao kept his Wu Dao sword and looked in the direction of the green fallen peak. He said thoughtfully, "I wonder how Wu Wenyong is doing. I hope everything goes well." Qing Luo District, Ruined Temple. As soon as Wu Wenyong turned around, 2 sabers with cold light came at him. In a moment of desperation, Wu Wenyong crossed his arms, and 2 silver-white bracers appeared on his wrists. The saber landed on Wu Wenyong's silver-white wrist guard. Wu Wenyong took 2 steps back and steadied himself. He looked at the guard, who was full of fighting spirit, and said coldly, "Didn't young Master Shu agree to let me go? What are you doing?" "Humph!" The guard snorted and said with a hoarse voice, "That's right. Young Master Shu agreed to let your family reunite, but he wants you to reunite in hell." "Impossible. Yuan Shu and I have an agreement. He promised that as long as I help him complete that task, he will keep his promise." "Ha, how can you call young Master Shu by his name?" The guard showed disdain and said, "Go, kill them." Suddenly, 2 guards from the Shadow Department appeared from behind the statue. They were both 8th-level Spirit Emperors and attacked the 3 people who were trembling under the statue. Wu Wenyong snorted and a long spear appeared in his hand. He swept it out and the 2 guards were sent flying to the wall. The guard with the dual sabers said coldly, "9th-level Spirit Emperor? I've really underestimated you. Yuan Shu really thinks highly of me." Wu Wenyong held the long spear and stood in front of the 3 people. He said coldly, "You sent 2 8th-level Spirit Emperors and 1 9th-level Spirit Emperor just to deal with me. Interesting. You are about to die, and you still talk so much nonsense." "Oh, is that so?" Wu Wenyong looked at the dual saber guard with interest. The dual saber guard sneered, and was about to rush forward. Suddenly, a black square sky-decorated halberd attacked him from behind. The guard was startled and dodged to the right. Unexpectedly, 2 flying daggers drilled out from the ground, drilled into his sawls and flew out from his shoulders. The guard knelt on the ground weakly and looked at the 2 figures standing at the door. He died with his eyes open. The other 2 members of the Shadow Department saw that the situation was not good and ran away. One of the people standing at the door snorted and stepped forward. He picked up the sky piercer stuck in the ground and threw it at the escaping figure with all his strength. The other person did not want to be left behind. He took out the javelin in his hand and stared at the other figure. 2 screams came from the back wall of the ruined temple. At this time, Wu Wenyong, who was covering his sister's eyes, let go and thanked the 2 people who walked into the courtyard. "Thank you, Brother Xiang Chong and Brother Lu Fang." The 3 people standing behind Wu Wenyong also hurriedly got up and thanked Xiang Chong and Lu Fang. The 2 hurried forward and helped the 4 people up. Xiang Chong smiled and said, "Wu Wenyong, the people you should thank are not us, but our families, young master." Wu Wenyong's eyes were wet. He bowed and said, "I, Wu Wenyong, owe Yi Hao too much. I'm afraid I won't be able to repay it in this life." Lu Fang helped Wu Wenyong up and smiled. "Brother Wenyong, don't say that. After all, without your plan, our young master's plan would not have been successful. We saved you and your family not only because of our young master's instructions, but also because of our brotherhood. But our young master is really good at foreseeing things," Xiang Chong said with some admiration. "Our young master already knew that Yuan Shu would not let you and your family go, so he sent the 2 of us to secretly protect you." As they spoke, Lu Fang and Xiang Chong recalled that night and Yi Hao's orders to them. Alright, don't just stand here. The falling district is still the Yuan family's territory. If you don't want to be exposed, come with me. At this time, a sturdy figure appeared at the entrance of the ruined temple. This person was holding a green spear as he looked at everyone with a smile. Qingyu District in. Yi Hao took out a silver-white paper and carefully studied it. Suddenly, the lamp in the room flickered. Yi Hao looked at the black figure in front of the bed and asked, "How is it? Is Wu Wenyong and his family safe?" The person was dressed in black and had a thin figure. He cleared his throat and said, "Young Emperor, Zhou Tong has brought them back to the stronghold. Everything is fine now." "That's good." Yi Hao paused and said, "Tell Wu Wenyong not to come back for the next 2 days. He is now a dead man and should not show his face in public. Also, clean up the scene." "Yes." Yi Hao asked, "By the way, Zhang Qing, what are your cultivations now?" Chapter 1502. Yi Hao looked at the black figure kneeling in front of him and thought back to that night in Lishan City. After Yi Hao sent Old Man Gu back, he gave Zhou Tong some orders, and Zhou Tong left Lishan City. However, there were actually 3 people who left. They were Little Conqueror Zhou Tong, Ghost-Face Du Xing, and Vegetable Garden Zhang Qing. Before the battle with the Lin 4 heroes, Yi Hao actually summoned 3 people. However, he only let Zhou Tong, who was the strongest, appear, while the other 2 hid in the dark. This was to make it easier for the 2 to hide, operate, and gather information when they came to the Green Mountain Imperial City with Zhou Tong. Yi Hao knew that the Yuan family was very important in the Green Mountain Imperial City, so he set up a trap and let the 3 gather information. After the 3 arrived, they opened an inn in the Green Mountain District. Zhang Qing was the owner of the inn on the surface, but in fact, he was in charge of gathering information in secret. When Yi Hao first came to the Imperial City, the situation of the 7 great families that Zhou Tong told Yi Hao was all found out by Zhang Qing. Du Xing was the hired thug of the inn on the surface, but in fact, he was in charge of gathering people and training men of sacrifice, in case Yi Hao and Yuan Shu got into a conflict and Yi Hao had no one to rely on. Yi Hao gave the 3 of them a lot of spirit coins and pills. Du Xing used these pills and spirit coins to recruit about 50 assassins, and the number was still increasing. Most of these assassins were at the 7th and 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm. They were a very important force. As for Zhou Tong, he was the cook of the inn on the surface, but in fact, he was in charge of communicating with Yi Hao and dealing with some troublesome matters. Because Zhou Tong went to pick up Wu Wenyong today, it was the inn owner Zhang Qing who reported to Yi Hao. Facing Yi Hao's question, Zhang Qing seemed a little ashamed and answered, "Young Emperor, Zhou Tong and Du Xing are both 9th level Spirit Emperors, but I'm the only 8th level Spirit Emperor. I've let you down." Yi Hao smiled faintly and said, "It's okay. Aren't I also in the 8th level Spirit Emperor?" Zhang Qing smiled bitterly and said, "Young Emperor, you must be joking. How can I compare to you? A 7th level Spirit Emperor defeating a half-step Spirit Emperor is not something an ordinary person can do." Alright, stop flattering me. Oh right, I asked you to inquire about Yuan Mu. How is it going? At this point, Zhang Qing's interest was piqued. Young Emperor, gathering information is my forte. I have a rough understanding of Yuan Mu's situation. Although Yuan Mu is the son of the Yuan clan, he lost his sight when he was young. Therefore, the power of the Yuan clan fell into the hands of Yuan Shu. After Yuan Shu took over, he bullied Yuan Mu in every possible way. Not only did he remove Yuan Mu's guards, but a group of guards also mysteriously disappeared some time ago. Yi Hao asked, "What is Yuan Mu's response to this?" Yuan Mu is a soft persimmon. Yuan Shu can do whatever he wants. If he responds, he'll only die faster. Zhang Qing thought for a moment and said, "Oh right, I also heard that the banished immortal by Yuan Shu's side sends wine to Yuan Mu every day. Yi Hao was stunned and said, Yuan Shu is so good to Yuan Mu? How is that possible? Zhang Qing analyzed. In my opinion, the wine is most likely slow-acting poison. Yuan Shu wants Yuan Mu to die. Yi Hao thought for a moment and then asked, Is it possible to get in touch with Yuan Mu? Zhang Qing's pupils shrank and he asked, Young Emperor, don't tell me you want to cooperate with Yuan Mu? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why not? Zhang Qing thought carefully and said, There is, but you have to cooperate with me. No problem. Then, Zhang Qing whispered into Yi Hao's ear. The next day. Yuan Manor, Yuan Mu's courtyard. A middle-aged man who looked like an innkeeper and a young man who looked like a waiter looked at the guards with sabers at their waists and said, Sirs, we're here to deliver food to young Master Mu. Young Master Mu ordered food from our inn yesterday, and we're here to deliver it today. The waiter waved the food box in his hand. Unfortunately, the guards at the door were indifferent. Then an enchanting figure walked out of Yuan Mu's courtyard. The waiter glanced at the person, and then quickly lowered his head. The innkeeper looked at the person and hurriedly ran over. At the same time, he took out a purse and put it in the person's hand. Sir Banished Immortal, you're finally here. We've delivered food to young Master Mu many times. Can you talk to young Master Shu and let us in? Banished Immortal, who had just come out of Yuan Mu's residence, looked at the purse carefully and said, Old Zhang, it's you again. You don't know how badly I was scolded when I told young Master Shu to let you in last time. The innkeeper, Zhang Qing, immediately understood. He reluctantly took out a space ring and handed it to Banished Immortal, saying, Sir Banished Immortal, the food will get cold if you don't go in. Young Master Mu specially ordered for hot food. You see, Banished Immortal held the space ring tightly and said with a smile, Old Zhang, we're so familiar with each other. No need to be so polite. If you want to go in, just go in. Okay. Thank you, Sir Banished Immortal. Zhang Qing walked in front and the waiter hurriedly followed. Just as they were about to enter, Banished Immortal called out to them. Wait. Zhang Qing turned around and smiled apologetically. Sir Banished Immortal, what are your orders? Banished Immortal slowly walked to the waiter. The waiter was nervous and didn't dare to raise his head. Banished Immortal slowly extended a finger and lifted the waiter's chin. He smiled and said, Ah Dong, you're still so handsome. The waiter called Ah Dong opened his mouth and babbled. Unfortunately, no sound came out. Banished Immortal shook his head regretfully. What a pity. You're a mute. Open the food box. I want to check it. Okay, no problem. Zhang Qing hurriedly ran over and opened the food box. Banished Immortal checked it. After confirming that there were no problems, he let the two in. The moment he closed the box, Ah Dong exhaled softly and wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead without batting an eyelid. In the main hall, Mu Tao stared closely at the corridor. When she didn't see anyone, she couldn't help but say angrily, Why is old Zhang so slow? What time is it? He still hasn't sent the food. Holding a book in his hand, Yuan Mu smiled. Wait a bit. He'll be here soon. Mu Tao said angrily, Young master, don't tell me you've been stopped by Yuan Shu's people again. No, I have to go take a look. Before Yuan Mu could call out to Mu Tao had already run out. However, it didn't take long for Mu Tao to come running back. Yuan Mu's eyes were covered with a white cloth, but he seemed to be able to see Mu Tao's movements. He smiled and asked, The food is here? Chapter 1503. Mu Tao happily ran to Yuan Mu's side and helped him to the table. She smiled and said, Master, the food is here. The food is here. Yuan Mu reached out and gently touched Mu Tao's forehead. He smiled and said, Look at you. Mu Tao giggled and didn't refute. She seemed to enjoy being touched by Yuan Mu. Not long after, two people walked into the main hall. Zhang Qing put the food box on the table and took out the food. He smiled and said, Master Mu, I've made you wait. Ah Dong, who was standing to the side, raised his head and looked seriously at Yuan Mu, who was wearing a white cloth and wearing a white robe. He looked gentle and refined. As Mu Tao took the dishes, she complained, "Old Zhang, you guys came too late today. I'm starving to death." "Mu Tao, don't be rude," Yuan Mu said. Mu Tao stuck out her tongue and didn't say anything else. Yuan Mu held his chopsticks and smiled. "Old Zhang, children don't understand. Don't bicker with them. Banished Immortal must have made things difficult for you today. When we leave, I'll ask Mu Tao to give you more spirit coins." "Master Mu, you're exaggerating. These are nothing. If Master Mu wants to eat, we should give you some." "Oh, it's time to eat," Mu Tao shouted. She picked up her bowl and chopsticks and started sweeping through the food on the table. Yuan Mu smiled and picked up his bowl and chopsticks. He slowly chewed and swallowed, enjoying the food. Suddenly, Mu Tao put down her bowl and chopsticks with a clang. She lay on the table. Yuan Mu remained indifferent and continued to eat the rice in his bowl. At this moment, Ah Dong sat across from Yuan Mu, while Zhang Qing stood behind him. Ah Dong cleared his throat and actually spoke. "Everyone says that young Master Mu is blind. I wonder how young Master Mu can tell?" Yuan Mu put down his bowl and chopsticks and wiped his mouth with a handkerchief. He said, "I, Yuan Mu, am blind, but I'm not a cripple." Ah Dong, who usually comes with old Zhang to deliver food, comes in a panic. "But you're different. You don't sound panicked. Instead, you're very calm." Ah Dong cupped his hands and said, "Young Master Mu's hearing is extraordinary. I am impressed." Ah Dong glanced at the dishes on the table and said with a smile, "It seems that young Master Mu is also hiding his strength." Yuan Mu smiled and asked, "Why do you think so?" "I put knockout drugs in the dishes on this table. Not only will ordinary people be knocked out, even masters of the Spirit Emperor realm will fall down. But young Master Mu is safe and sound. It's a bit unbelievable." Yuan Mu didn't respond. He asked with a smile, "May I know who you are? Why are you pretending to be a waiter?" Ah Dong cleared his throat and said seriously, "I'm Yi Sangao. I have something important to discuss with young Master Mu." Yuan Mu chuckled. "So it's Yi Zhuguo. What business do you have with me?" Yi Hao did not beat around the bush and said directly, "Help you seize power and get rid of Yuan Shu." The hall instantly fell silent, followed by a burst of laughter. Yi Hao was puzzled. "Why is young Master Mu laughing?" Yuan Mu stopped laughing and said with amusement, "I'm laughing because you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yuan Shu is the head of the Yuan clan and the master of the Celestial Cloud Pavilion. You want to get rid of him? How do you want to get rid of him?" Yi Hao said with a serious face, "I can't get rid of Yuan Shu by myself. But what if Princess Ling and Yu Yingluan work together?" Yuan Mu picked up the wine on the table and poured a cup. "I didn't expect these two to be on your side. I wonder if we're enough to get rid of him together." Yuan Mu tapped the table and asked, "Aren't you afraid that I'll report you?" Yi Hao laughed and stood up. He put his hands on the table and stared at Yuan Mu. "I'm afraid. Of course I'm afraid. But I'm more afraid that young Master Mu will die before me. Yuan Shu can't tolerate you. This isn't the first day or two. If you expose me, you'll probably die before I do. At that time, you'll be a threat to him. As you can see, I don't have anyone by my side. There's only a servant. How can I help you?" Yuan Mu changed the topic. "As far as I know, young Master Mu is the son of the first wife. There are many elders in the Celestial Cloud Pavilion on your side. Although young Master Mu is blind, his cultivation is impressive." Yi Hao didn't say anything else. He ate the food on the table silently. Yuan Mu tapped the table with his fingers. Finally, he seemed to have made a decision. He took out a piece of paper and placed it on the table. "This is the map of Yuan Shu's power distribution and the topography of the Celestial Cloud Pavilion." Yi Hao took the paper and smiled. It seems that young Master Mu has been planning this all along. You've been waiting for an opportunity like me. Yi Hao put the paper away. He looked at Yuan Mu and asked curiously, I really want to know. If I didn't come, what would young Master Mu do? Yuan Mu answered casually, find someone and kill someone. Good. Yi Hao clapped and began to pack the food. Just as Yi Hao and Zhang Qing were about to leave, Yuan Mu stopped them. Wait, with just us we're still lacking. Young Master Mu, what do you think? Yi Hao turned around and asked. We're still missing an ally. Take this and go find him. Saying this, Yuan Mu threw a jade pendant over. Yi Hao took it and looked at it carefully. He found that there was nothing else on the jade pendant other than the word Mu carved on it. Yuan Mu frowned. Why aren't you leaving? Yi Hao smiled bitterly. You only gave me a jade pendant. How would I know who to look for? Isn't old Zhang good at gathering information? You should ask him. Yuan Mu's casual words made Yi Hao and Zhang Qing break out in a cold sweat. How did Yuan Mu know what Zhang Qing did? He'd never left the manor. This was too strange. Yuan Mu stood up and took Mu Tao into his arms. I've said everything I needed to say. You can leave now. Zhang Qing looked a bit embarrassed, but he still said, Young Master Mu, how about the money for the meal? Yuan Mu's face darkened. He stood there in a daze. Only Mu Tao knows where the money is. He's been knocked out by you. Come back tomorrow and deliver the meal. I'll pay you together. All right. Hearing this, Zhang Qing cupped his hands and thanked Yi Hao. Then, he left with Yi Hao. The two left the Yuan manor without a hitch. On the way, Yi Hao carefully looked at the jade pendant in his hand. He didn't find anything special about it, so he handed it to Zhang Qing. Zhang Qing took the jade pendant and looked at it carefully. Yi Hao looked back at the Yuan manor and muttered to himself, Yuan Mu isn't simple. Suddenly, Zhang Qing cried out in surprise. Young master, I know who to look for. Chapter 1504. In the inn, Yi Hao sat on the bed and quietly absorbed the power of the stars. At the same time, he didn't forget to cultivate spirit formations and alchemy. In 2 days, it would be the Azure Mountain Empire's ancestral worship assembly. If he wanted to survive until the end, the best way was to increase his strength. No matter what Yuan Shu's plan was, no matter if his allies were reliable or not, as long as he was strong, there was nothing to fear. Moreover, as long as he could get rid of Yuan Shu, he would be the prince consort of the Azure Mountain Empire in name. Then, he could make the Tian Yuan Empire ally with the Azure Mountain Empire. This way, the Tian Yuan Empire wouldn't need to rely on anyone. Thinking about this, Yi Hao's heart became more determined. The silver light became brighter and brighter. Qing Peak Qing family. The Qing family's patriarch, Qing Yunji, sat on the main seat and smiled at the other two patriarchs. The patriarch of the Hao family, Hao Gui, raised the teacup in his hand. After taking a sip, he said, Patriarch Qing, don't worry. Our Han family's cultivators are all ready. They are ready for your command. And not bad. Qing Yunji put down the teacup and looked at Huangfu Yunji. Huangfu family's patriarch, what about you? Huangfu Yunji said, Qing family's patriarch, don't worry. Everything is ready. Very good. Qing Yunji stood up and walked to the center of the hall. He looked at the gloomy sky and said, In the ancestral worship assembly in 2 days, I want the Ling family and Yuan family to die without a burial place. I want the Azure Mountain Empire to only have one surname, Qing. Hao Gui and Huangfu Yunji stood behind Qing Yunji and congratulated him. Qing Luo District, there was an inn. The inn was closed for 2 days because something happened to the owner's family. In reality, the inn's owner, chef, and hired thugs were all here. They were making plans for the ancestral worship assembly in 2 days. A tall middle-aged man who was carefully wiping a green spear said, Wu Wenyong's family has already been settled. I've already sent someone to secretly send them to Tianyuan New City. As for Wu Wenyong, he will move with you in 2 days. The skinny inn owner said, Good, leave this place to us. You and Xiang Chong will protect the young emperor. Don't let anything happen to him. The middle-aged man picked up the green spear and waved it. Don't worry, I know what to do. The third person in the room was also a hired thug of the inn. He picked up a pair of blades and put them on his shoulders. He laughed sinisterly and said, Hee, I can't wait to see Yuan Shu's expression when he comes back from the ancestral worship ground and sees his mansion. Ha! The man with 2 blades looked at the inn owner and asked, Oh right, did you find the person the young emperor asked you to find? The inn owner stood up and leaned against the window. He looked at the endless stream of people on the street and said, Hey, what do you think I do for a living? Of course I found him, but I didn't expect him to be Yuan Mu's man. The middle-aged man put down his spear and asked curiously, Who is that person? The inn owner replied unhappily, What's the rush? Won't you know when the time comes? The middle-aged man chuckled and didn't ask any more. He continued wiping his spear. The inn returned to silence. Qing Luo District, Celestial Cloud Pavilion. In a secret room in the Celestial Cloud Pavilion, Yuan Shu stared at the 3 black beads on the table in a daze. Suddenly, a black figure appeared beside Yuan Shu. Young master, that monster is full and has fallen asleep. Yuan Shu collected his thoughts and muttered, It's finally asleep. If it didn't, I really wouldn't know what to do. Yi continued, Everything is ready. Now we just have to wait for the ancestral worship in 2 days. Yuan Shu closed his eyes and said, Why do I feel like time is passing so slowly? It seems like it's going to pass faster. I can't wait. A white figure stood in front of Yuan Shu. Banished Immortal lowered his head and asked softly, Young Master Shu, you were looking for me? Yes, Yuan Shu answered lazily. Yuan Shu yawned and said, 2 days later, I'll leave a few people for you to go to Yuan Mu's courtyard. Do you know what to do? Banished Immortal was startled and secretly made a throat-slitting gesture. Although Yuan Shu's eyes were closed, he seemed to be able to see Banished Immortal's movement. He nodded lightly. Banished Immortal's face darkened. He lowered his head and said, Yes, I know what to do. Yuan Shu waved his hand and Yi and Banished Immortal left. Only Yuan Shu and his light snoring were left in the secret room. Qingshan District, Imperial Palace. Ling Junyun stood in the tallest pavilion of the palace and looked at the dark sky in a daze. Unknowingly, a man in golden armor had appeared behind her. Ling Junyun stroked her hair and asked, Is everything ready? Yes. Where's father? He's sleeping. Then let's wait until we return from the ancestral worship ground and do the 2 things together. Okay. Suddenly, the 2 stopped talking and the air fell into silence again. Ling Junyun looked at the dark sky and asked sadly, Little Jia, do you think we'll be able to come back? Golden Armor was stunned and then said, I'll definitely protect the princess. Anyone who wants to hurt you will have to step over my dead body first. Don't be so serious. I'm just asking. Golden Armor looked at the smiling girl in front of him and felt a touch of warmth in his heart. We'll definitely come back alive. Ling Junyun turned around and looked at the dark sky at a comet with a tail. Her eyes were resolute. The young man behind her didn't say anything and just gripped the ancient golden sword in his hand. All the factions were preparing for the ancestral worship trip in 2 days. A war that concerned the fate of the Qingshan Empire and even the situation of the ancient demons was about to erupt. 2 days later, in the palace of the Qingshan district, there was a huge square with a huge spiritual array carved on the ground. There were many guards standing around this spiritual array. These guards wore golden armor and held long spears. They stood silently around the spiritual array and waited for the people from the 7 great families to arrive. The first to arrive at the square was the Hao family, one of the 7 great families. The head of the Hao family, Hao Gui, wore a red robe and came to the square with dozens of guards. Just as Hao Gui was about to step into the huge spiritual array, he was stopped by a guard in golden armor. Princess Ling isn't here yet. Please wait, head of the Hao family. Hao Gui looked at the cold-looking guard in golden armor and snorted angrily. He stood aside and waited quietly. Yes. Chapter 1505. This was not his first time participating in the ancestral worship assembly. The last time he participated in the ancestral worship assembly was with his father, who had passed away long ago. At that time, their Hao family was also the first family to arrive. After arriving, they wanted to enter the spiritual array first, but they were stopped by these golden armored guards. Therefore, Hao Gui was already used to it. He looked at the guards he brought. The lowest cultivation was at the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, and several were at the 9th level of the Spirit Emperor realm. All the elites of the Hao family were here. Therefore, this time, they could only succeed and not fail. Hao Gui wanted to bring his son along, but in the end, he dispelled this idea. This trip was extremely dangerous. If there was any accident, he could leave a descendant for the Hao family. Not long after, Huang Fu Yunji also came. The lineup he brought was similar to Hao Gui's. They were all elites, and similarly, they did not bring any descendants. The two old friends who had known each other for many years looked at each other. They could see the ambition and helplessness in each other's eyes. They wanted to be ministers of the dragon, but they also knew that it was not so easy to be a minister of the dragon. If they were not careful, they would implicate their entire family and fall into the abyss. They were helpless because they were already in the same boat as the Qing family. It was impossible to continue thinking. Then, 3 more figures appeared in the square. They were the father and son of the Yu family and the head of the Han family, Han Shi. Han Shi looked at the huge team behind Hao Gui and smiled. Hao Gui, Huang Fu Yunji, are you two going to worship the ancestors? Those who don't know would think that you are going to kill people. Hao Gui was stunned at first. Looking behind the 3 people, he could not help but be stunned when he found that there was no one behind them. Huang Fu Yunji smiled and replied, Han Shi, you don't know. The 2 of us have too many enemies, so we still have to be careful. Yuing Luan coldly snorted. The ancestral worship ground can only be entered by people of our 7 great families. Could it be that your enemies are people of our 7 great families? Hao Gui and Huang Fu Yunji's mouths twitched, but they endured and did not get angry. A familiar voice faintly passed into everyone's ears. The 2 of you don't have to put on an act anymore. I'm sure the 2 of you know better than us who we've brought so many people here for. If the 2 of you don't mind, you can stand on the same side as us. The 3 of us will definitely welcome you with open arms. Everyone turned around. Qing Yunji, who was dressed in white, walked over with over 50 guards behind him. Yuing Luan and Han Shi frowned. It seemed like the Qing clan had also turned out in full force. Haha, brother Qing, you're openly poaching my Yuan clan's people. That's not very nice of you. Just as Qing Yunji, Hao Gui, and the others were standing together, Yuan Shu appeared with Ying Yi. Qing Yunji narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Yuan Shu and Ying Yi. His expression was grave. Yuan Shu looked at the 100 people behind Qing Yunji and smiled. I heard Brother Qing's words. These 100 people are for me, Yuan Shu, to see. Qing Yunji sneered. Everyone knows that you, Yuan Shu, aren't willing to suffer a loss, but I didn't expect you to only bring a few people to the ancestral worship assembly. You must have a backup plan. Yuan Shu smiled and said, Since you already know, then why are you still talking so much? Qing Yunji ignored him and looked at Yu Sanjiang. Oh, isn't this one of the 2 trash, Yu Sanjiang? How is it? Are your injuries healed? Yu Sanjiang replied, No need for Qing clan head to worry. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely ask Qing clan head to teach me. Qing Yunji snorted. Overestimating yourself. At this point, 6 of the 7 great clans had arrived. Only the Imperial clan and Yi Hao hadn't arrived. Not long later, the golden armored guards around the formation all looked towards the east. They lowered their heads and knelt down on one knee. Welcome Princess Ling, Yi Zhuguo. As for the members of the 6 great clans, they stood calmly where they were, looking coldly at the figures of a man and a woman who were slowly walking over from the east. The woman among them was wearing a golden-colored dress. She came to the front of the crowd, glanced at them, and said in a clear voice, "Since everyone is here, let's go." Yes. The golden armored protector stood up and inserted all the spears in his hands into the ground. Suddenly, the huge spiritual array on the ground lit up and creaking sounds rang out. Next, Yi Hao walked to the center of the formation. He took out a jade pendant with the word Ling on it and threw it into the air. Suddenly, all the spiritual energy around the plaza turned into a white line and shot onto the jade pendant. Dong dong dong. The plaza sounded like the bells of a temple. White mist rose from the formation and soon, the entire plaza was covered in white mist. Ling Junyun looked at the white mist and hesitated. In the end, she still stepped into the formation. 2 golden pillars of light soared into the sky, and Yi Hao and Ling Junyun disappeared from the spiritual array. The other 6 great clans saw this and followed. Then, one golden light pillar after another lit up. After all the members of the 6 great clans were teleported away by the huge light pillar, a golden figure and a silver figure followed in. Behind them, there were 5 other figures who quietly followed them in. Finally, the golden armored guards pulled out their spears and the white mist dissipated. The dazzling light from the huge spiritual array dimmed once again, gradually disappearing. It was as if the huge spiritual array had never appeared in the square. The golden armored guards took their spears and left the place, heading to the other palace guards of the palace. Falling Sky District, Yuan Manor. The white-clothed banished immortal stood in Yuan Mu's courtyard with 4 black-clothed guards behind him. Mu Tao looked at the banished immortal and said angrily, "Banished immortal, what do you want? My young master is taking a nap. You're not allowed to enter." The banished immortal smiled and said, "It's not what I want. You should ask young Master Shu what he wants." "I don't care what you want. You're not allowed to enter. You're courting death." In his room, Yuan Mu frowned. But the reason he frowned wasn't because of the banished immortal, but because of what the bronze-masked man said. "What did you say? Is that person's mount under the spiritual vein of Green Mountain?" The bronze-masked man said in a heavy voice, "That's right. I just got the news." "How did you get the news?" "He spread it." Yuan Mu slammed the table and said angrily, "Why didn't you spread it earlier?" "Because Yuan Shu is keeping a close eye on it. I didn't have the time." Yuan Mu stood up and paced around the room. Finally, he decided, "No, I have to go personally. Otherwise, I won't be at ease." "What about here?" "Fang Yu, I'll leave this to you. You know what to do." Fang Yu hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Then, white light lit up under Yuan Mu's feet and he disappeared from the room. Chapter 1506. There was an inn in the Falling Sky district. Zhang Qing looked at the time in the sky and felt that it was about time, so he walked to the backyard of the inn. At this moment, not only was the inn's hired thug Du Xing standing in the backyard, Wu Wenyong in blue, but there were also 50 men of sacrifice recruited by Du Xing. They were all dressed in black and had samurai swords at their waist. Zhang Qing came to the backyard of the inn and looked at the orderly crowd. He couldn't help but nod and say in a deep voice, "It's about time. Young Master and the others should have already entered the place of ancestral worship. Let's kill our way to the Yuan mansion and wipe out the forces Yuan Shu left in the Celestial Cloud Pavilion. Even if he's lucky enough to come back, he can only be a stray dog." Roar. No one said anything. Instead, they clenched their right fists and beat their chests with all their might. Thus, the group of people filed out of the inn's back door and went straight to the Yuan mansion. The people on the street didn't dare to say anything when they saw the murderous aura. They hurriedly ran to the side and made way for them. At this moment, in Yuan Mu's courtyard, Mu Tao was angrily looking at Banished Immortal, not allowing him to disturb Yuan Mu's afternoon nap. Banished Immortal waved his hand impatiently. The black-clothed men behind him immediately moved. Just as they were about to pull Mu Tao away, the door behind Mu Tao suddenly opened. Yuan Mu, dressed in white, stood quietly at the door. Banished Immortal looked at Yuan Mu and said with a smile, "Oh, young Master Mu, you're finally willing to come out." Yuan Mu smiled and said straightforwardly, "Banished Immortal, do you know your crime?" Banished Immortal couldn't believe his ears. He laughed and said, "Crime? Young Master Mu, I'm afraid you haven't even woken up from your afternoon nap. Didn't I just trespass into the courtyard? What crime did I commit?" Banished Immortal, speak normally. Don't be so sarcastic. Mu Tao became angrier and angrier. He wanted to rush up, but Yuan Mu grabbed his arm. Mu Tao looked at Yuan Mu's palm and felt that something was strange. He remembered that young Master's palm was very delicate and wasn't so prickly. He then looked at Yuan Mu's face. After seeing that it was young Master, he calmed down and glared fiercely at Banished Immortal. "Go away, little brat. This has nothing to do with you." Banished Immortal waved his hand impatiently at Mu Tao. He looked at Yuan Mu with a smile and said, "Young Master Mu, I won't argue with you. Young Master Shu has invited you. Are you going or not?" Yuan Mu stood calmly with one hand holding Mu Tao and the other behind his back. He said, "I'm not going." "Good for you, Yuan Mu. You really refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Yuan Shu must not have invited me for anything good. He must have asked you to invite me to see the King of Hell." When Mu Tao heard this, she was unable to restrain her anger and cursed at the exiled immortal. The exiled immortal ignored him and chuckled. "So what if you guessed correctly? You have to go today even if you don't want to." Banished Immortal looked at the weak little attendant and the weak scholar with disdain. He smiled and said, "Go, send them to heaven. Do it cleanly." As soon as he finished speaking, the 4 members of the dark group rushed out. Yuan Mu laughed heartily. The exiled immortal was puzzled. He asked, "Yuan Mu, you're about to die. What are you laughing about?" Yuan Mu's laughter gradually turned into a sneer. He softly said, "Banished Immortal, I'm laughing at how you don't even know that you're about to die." "What do you mean?" The exiled immortal's pupils shrank. He was puzzled, but he quickly understood. Yuan Mu released his grip on Mu Tao. Without the restraint, Mu Tao was like a wild beast. She roared and her body began to emit a terrifying spiritual power. The exiled immortal felt a sense of suffocation when he faced that spiritual power. The 4 bodyguards who had rushed forward were tossed aside by Mu Tao as if they were trash. Banished Immortal froze in place. He watched as Mu Tao, who was only as tall as his waist, easily threw the 4 dark sect guards, who were a head taller than him, headfirst into the ground like javelins. Mu Tao grinned. The exiled immortal felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, Mu Tao no longer had the childlike mischief from before. Instead, it was replaced by the evil and domineering aura of an ancient, vicious beast. Mu Tao's black eyes gradually turned red. Her aura became more and more frightening. The exiled immortal asked himself. He had never seen an aura stronger than Mu Tao's. That aura even surpassed the spirit monarch realm. The exiled immortal's legs trembled. He involuntarily knelt on the ground and screamed, "Is this still that little attendant? Why do you have such a powerful aura? Who are you?" Mu Tao still chuckled. She didn't say anything, but her footsteps were getting closer and closer to the exiled immortal. The exiled immortal was terrified. He looked at the smiling Yuan Mu and said, "Young Master Mu, I was wrong. It was all my fault in the past. I was wrong. Please forgive me." Before he finished speaking, Mu Tao charged in front of the exiled immortal and threw out a palm. Bang! The exiled immortal crashed into the wall of the courtyard. Blood slowly dripped from his forehead, dyeing the ground red. Mu Tao roared angrily. She wanted to charge forward again, but Yuan Mu suddenly appeared behind her. He stretched out 2 fingers and lightly tapped her forehead. Mu Tao's crimson-red eyes suddenly calmed down, and the aura that caused one's heart to palpitate gradually dissipated. Mu Tao's legs went soft. She was about to fall to the ground. Yuan Mu reached out and held Mu Tao in his arms. He frowned. Just now, he felt that the Yuan mansion had been invaded. According to the plan, it should be Yi Hao's people. Therefore, he stopped the furious Mu Tao. He didn't want Yi Hao to suspect their identities. Cough, cough. In the end, banished immortal, who was coughing up blood, hurriedly crawled to Yuan Mu's feet and begged, "Young Master Mu, I was wrong. I really know my wrongs. You're a great person, please don't hold a grudge against a lowly person." Yuan Mu chuckled. He hugged Mu Tao with one hand and quickly tapped the exiled immortal's throat with 2 fingers on his right hand. "No, young Master Mu, please spare me." The exiled immortal saw Yuan Mu coming at him. He hurriedly knelt and begged for mercy. Yuan Mu's fingers were as fast as lightning. He tapped the exiled immortal's throat and quickly retracted them. The exiled immortal opened his tightly shut eyes. When he found that he was still alive, he couldn't help but feel excited. He wanted to thank Yuan Mu, but he couldn't make a sound. He looked at Yuan Mu in confusion. At that moment, a young man in blue rushed over with several black-clothed death guards. The exiled immortal's pupils constricted. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't make a sound. Wu Wenyong, who was running over, was shocked to see the exiled immortal kneeling on the ground. He quickly protected Yuan Mu, then looked at the bleeding exiled immortal with vigilance. Chapter 1507. Wu Wenyong realized that Zhixian had no intention of attacking Yuan Mu, so he asked, "Young Master Mu, what's wrong? We just entered the Yuan mansion and heard a commotion. We were worried that something had happened to you, so I brought a few men and rushed over." Yuan Mu said calmly, "Yuan Shu sent Zhixian to kill me, but he was defeated by my guards." Wu Wenyong looked around and realized that the 4 men from the dark sect had died tragically. When he looked at Yuan Mu again, there was more respect in his eyes. Wu Wenyong looked at Zhixian, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "Young Master Mu, what do you plan to do with Zhixian?" Yuan Mu turned around with Mu Tao in his arms and said softly, "I'll leave it to you. I'm tired." "Yes." Wu Wenyong waved his hand and 2 men of sacrifice immediately lifted Zhixian. Wu Wenyong looked at Yuan Mu's back and said, "In that case, we won't disturb young Master Mu's rest. We'll leave now." Then, the group left Yuan Mu's courtyard. After Yuan Mu placed Mu Tao on the bed in the room, he suddenly knelt on one knee and held his chest in pain. Then, his face changed drastically and he became a completely different person. Then, he took out a bronze mask and put it on. He looked deeply at Mu Tao, who was sleeping soundly, and hid in the darkness. Just as Yi Hao and the others entered the ancestral worship grounds, something big happened in Tianyuan New City, thousands of miles away. The Yueluan Empire began to send out an ambassador. They wanted the Tianyuan Empire to become their vassal kingdom. However, the ambassador did not even see Yi Hao after entering the new city. Husan Yang and the others were the only ones receiving him. The messenger was furious when he couldn't see Yi Hao. He thought that Yi Hao was too rude and didn't take the Yueluan Empire seriously. When the messenger reported the situation to the Yueluan Emperor was furious. He gave the Tianyuan Empire 3 days to ask for Yi Hao's forgiveness. Otherwise, the Tianyuan Empire would be destroyed. At this moment, everyone in the palace of Tianyuan New City was in a mess. They didn't know what to do with this news. The Full Moon Empire has a spirit emperor expert. What should we do? What's there to be afraid of? At worst, we'll just have to fight. He's delusional if he wants Xiao Di to apologize to him. That's easy for you to say. They're a fifth-rank empire. They can just send out a spirit monarch elite and destroy our empire. Then what do you think we should do? We can't really bow down to him and beg for forgiveness, right? If we do that, our dignity will be gone. Everyone expressed their opinions in the hall, but no one could reach a consensus. Thus, they looked at the two women in the hall, waiting for them to make a decision. Hu Sanyang thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, "We can only try to stall for time. Also, we need to calm down the people of the kingdom of Tianyuan so that they don't panic." Yi then said, "That's right, Sanyang is right. Furthermore, I know the Yueluan Empire well. Even if we surrender, they won't let us off easily." At this moment, Yi's eyes revealed a trace of hatred. This was because the Yueluan Empire's actions reminded her of something that happened in the past. Hu Sanyang looked at Yi's dazed eyes and said firmly, "Let's do it this way. Anyone who tries to make peace will be killed." Hu Sanyang pulled out the soft sword at her waist and pointed it at the table in the hall. She chopped off a corner of the table, emitting a majestic aura. Everyone below the stage shrunk their necks and felt a chill in their hearts. They all kept quiet. Hong Yen, who was in the crowd, looked at the two women on the stage with a strange light in his eyes. Qingshan Empire, under Qingshan. At the intersection of the 7 spiritual veins, there was a slightly raised platform. Suddenly, 2 golden pillars of light flashed on the platform. As the light scattered, a man and a woman appeared on the platform. Yihao looked around and realized that he was surrounded by walls. In front of him was a pitch-black corridor that led to an unknown place. Yihao felt the spiritual qi of heaven and earth here. He felt that it was extremely dense and couldn't help but praise, as expected of the intersection of the 7 spiritual veins. The spiritual qi here is much denser than outside. Of course. Ling Junyun, who was wearing a golden dress, pointed at the pitch-black corridor and said, "That corridor leads to the ancestral worship ground. Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, many golden pillars of light lit up on the platform one after another. Many figures appeared. For many people, it was their first time here. They couldn't help but marvel at the density of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth here. Only the 6 family heads were unmoved. They stared at the corridor in front of them. Ling Junyun and Yi Hao walked at the front, followed by Yuan Shu, Ying Yi, the Yu family's father and son, and Han Shi. Following them were Qing Yunji, Huangfu Yunji, and Hao Gui. Finally, there were more than 100 cultivators from the 3 great clans. Ling Junyun had just taken a step when the corridor suddenly lit up with specks of golden light, extending all the way to the end of the corridor. Everyone followed behind Ling Junyun for about an hour. The narrow corridor suddenly widened. Originally, it could only accommodate 2 people walking side by side. Now, it could accommodate 5 people walking side by side. Their field of vision also widened considerably. Yihao walked along and carefully observed. He discovered that the walls on both sides of the corridor were carved with strange glyphs. For some reason, these glyphs seemed unfathomable and difficult to understand. However, in his eyes, they were abnormally easy to understand. Moreover, they felt very familiar. Yihao quietly walked up and asked in a voice that only the 2 of them could hear, "Is there something suppressed in the ancestral worship ground under this green mountain?" Ling Junyun was puzzled. She replied, "I've never heard Imperial Father mention it. On my way here, I carefully observed these glyphs. When connected together, I discovered that it was a corner of some great suppression formation. Do you think Yuan Shu's plan is related to the thing suppressed?" "It's possible." Ling Junyun's expression was somewhat grave. She said, "However, if there really is something suppressed here, then it'll be troublesome. This is the intersection of the 7 great spirit veins. Using the spiritual energy of the 7 great spirit veins to suppress it, You can imagine just how terrifying that thing is. Right now, we can only take one step at a time. After saying that, Yi Hao continued to observe the glyphs on the walls. At this moment, everyone walked out of the corridor and arrived in a spacious cave. In the middle of the cave, there was a huge platform. On top of the platform, there were 7 spirit tablets carved from sandalwood. Around the spirit tablets, there were many praying mats, which seemed to be for people to worship and rest. Apart from this huge platform and a few prayer mats, there was nothing else in the cave. Chapter 1508. Ling Junyun pointed at the huge platform and said, "This is the place where we worship our ancestors in the Qingshan Empire. The 7 tablets on the platform are the ancestors of our 7 great clans. You can kneel in front of the tablets of your ancestors and start worshipping them." This is the ancestral ground? I see that other than the spirit qi being thicker, there's nothing different. Qin Yunji suddenly stood up and looked around the cave. Ling Junyun and Yi Hao didn't talk to him. They wanted to find a praying mat to sit under the Ling family ancestors' memorial tablet, but they were stopped by Qin Yunji. Yuan Shu and the others were also surrounded by the Qin clan and the other 2 clans. Ling Junyun was slightly angry and shouted, "Qin Yunji, what is the meaning of this? This is the ancestral ground. Killing is not allowed here." Qin Yunji sneered and didn't even look at her. Yuan Shu smiled and said, "Princess Ling, can't you see that Qin Yunji wants to rebel? He wants all of us to stay in this cave." "Yuan Shu, you're so fearless. Take out whatever trump card you have. Otherwise, you won't have a chance." Qin Yunji sneered. "What trump card can I have? I just have a small thing to take out." Qin Yunji's eyes narrowed as he stared at Yuan Shu's hand. Suddenly, Yuan Shu laughed and said, "Why are you so nervous? I'm just taking out a jade Buddha stone." As he spoke, a Buddha-shaped jade appeared in Yuan Shu's hand. Yi Hao and Yu Sanjiang looked over and their hearts trembled. Then, Yuan Shu snapped his fingers and said, "Yu Sanjiang, didn't you say that you would ask Qin Yunji for advice? I'll give you the chance today." Just as he finished speaking, Yu Sanjiang, who was wielding his 1-meter-long sword, uncontrollably charged towards Qin Yun City. "Sanjiang." Ying Luan extended his hand, but grabbed onto nothing. He anxiously said, "Sanjiang, wait for me, father will come and help you." Qin Yunji smiled. "Yuan Shu, is this your trump card? You're underestimating me. The Yu family's father and son are just a big piece of trash and a small piece of trash. Come at me together." The Yu father and son attacked Qin Yun together. The cultivators of the other 3 clans also took out their weapons and attacked Yuan Shu and the others who were surrounded. Right at this moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. Unknowingly, Yi Hao suddenly stood on the platform with the red Wu Dao sword in his hand. He kicked the 7 tablets away before stabbing the sword into the ground. 1. A red spiritual power surged out from the stage and wrapped tightly around Yi Hao's arm. Yi Hao's eyes were red as he growled, "Open." The Wu Dao sword stabbed into the stage like it was a keyhole. It began to slowly turn and spun faster and faster until the stage was split in half. Seeing this, Yuan Shu was happy. Success. The others didn't understand. Not only did the others not understand, even Yi Hao, who was doing this, didn't understand. After Yuan Shu snapped his fingers, he suddenly felt his body heat up. His eyes were red as he pulled out his Wu Dao sword and rushed towards the stage. After standing on the stage, a voice in his mind kept telling him, "Stab it, open it, stab it, open it." Thus, Yi Hao couldn't help but stab the Wu Dao sword into the stage. Then, the stage shattered as if a seal had been opened. The entire cave began to distort. Everyone felt a headache and a tightness in their chest. Then, their vision turned black and they all disappeared. After everyone disappeared, the runes on the cave walls also disappeared. At the foot of an unknown mountain range 10,000 miles away from Green Mountain, a middle-aged man with a fair complexion looked in the direction of Green Mountain, seeming to have some thoughts. Sitting on the coffin, he put down the golden book in his hand and counted with his fingers. A faint smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he murmured, "I didn't expect that guy to break the seal before me. It looks like the old guy was right. It'll be my turn soon." Then, he picked up the golden book on the coffin and murmured, "To be honest, the current ancient demon region is really boring. It's getting worse and worse with each generation. Alas." Ling Junyun, who felt a bit dizzy, stood up from the ground with great effort. She was a bit surprised when she looked around. It was because she was in a lush forest at the moment. The cave where a great change had taken place had disappeared. She looked around and suddenly found a golden figure lying not far away. She hurriedly ran over and called out, "Little Jia, wake up. Why are you here?" The golden armor opened its eyes in a daze and held its forehead as it recalled, "I don't know either. At that time, I was hiding in that cave. Suddenly, I felt a huge suction force pulling me. Then, my vision turned black and I lost consciousness." Ling Junyun thought carefully and said, "It looks like it has something to do with that stage. Maybe it's like what Yi Hao said. Something incredible is sealed here. If that stage is a lock, then Yi Hao is the key to it. That's why Yuan Shu helped Yi Hao win the competition at all costs, so as to control him and use him to break the seal here." Golden Armor had completely regained his consciousness now. He said, "Princess, do you think the Emperor came here 10 years ago and something happened that caused him to be in a coma? It's completely possible. There was nothing in that stage, but this place is like a different world." Ling Junyun put away her thoughts and said, "Let's not worry about that for now. Let's find Yi Hao first." Yuan Shu came prepared. "I'm afraid he'll be in danger." Yes. The two of them had not walked far when they suddenly heard the sound of fighting. They followed the sound and found that the father and son of the Yu family and Han Shi were surrounded by Hao Gui and his men. "Princess, should we make a move?" Ling Junyun suppressed Golden Armor, who was about to make a move. She shook her head and said, "Let's wait a little longer." Han Shi, who was surrounded, looked at the dozen or so cultivators with unfriendly expressions and the smiling Hao Gui. He said, "Where is this place? Why didn't Yuan Shu tell us?" Yuing Luan said with a cold expression, "You're dreaming if you expect Yuan Shu to tell you everything. Father, do you know where this place is?" Yu Sanjiang's heart skipped a beat. Yuing Luan said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know where this place is, the disaster 10 years ago must have something to do with this place." Han Shi's eyes lit up. He said, "You mean, that's right." Yu Yingluan said to himself, "If I remember correctly, the tallest mountain here is the goal of Yuan Shu's trip." Chapter 1509. Han Shi was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Yu Yingluan recalled, 10 years ago, my father was bedridden after returning from the place of ancestral worship. He passed away the next day. I always felt that my father's death was very strange, so I flipped through the notes he left behind when he was alive. It recorded this forest and also recorded that in this space there was a very terrifying thing sealed on the highest mountain. Damn Yuan Shu! Han Shi growled and said, "He's been lying to us. I didn't expect Yuan Shu to know how to get here. I've really fallen into his trap." Hey, what are you guys whispering about?" Hao Gui looked at Yu Yingluan and the other two impatiently and said, "I said that I'll give you 2 choices. Submit to me or die." Yu Sanjiang snorted coldly, "You? Don't even think about it." Hao Gui smiled and said, "You're young, but your tone is quite big. Go kill them." With that, the surrounding cultivators swarmed forward, and everyone fell into a chaotic battle. Behind the tree, Ling Junyun looked at the golden armor and asked, "Little Jia, did you hear what they said just now?" "Of course." The golden armor said proudly. Hao Gue is at the Spirit Emperor realm, so he naturally can't hear it clearly. But I'm different. I'm the Spirit Emperor. No matter how soft they can't hide it from my ears. After Ling Junyun heard this, she looked at the sky and saw a mountain piercing through the clouds. Let's go. Since we know where Yuan Shu will be, we'll just go there and wait for him. The golden armor stood up and asked, "What about them?" Ling Junyun glanced at him and said casually, "Since they revealed such an important piece of information, let's help them. Hurry up, I'll wait for you in front." Okay. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden figure suddenly appeared behind Hao Gue. Hao Gue suddenly realized. Just as he was about to retreat, the golden armor grabbed Hao Gui's throat and lifted him into the air. Hao Gui's face flushed red. The more he struggled, the more he could not breathe. The golden armor casually threw Hao Gue away and he was sent flying. He crashed into a few trees and broke them. Then, the golden armor slapped the cultivator closest to him. The cultivator bled from his 7 orifices and died on the spot. In just 3 breaths of time, the 10+ cultivators who had been clamoring earlier all fell to the ground, dead. Han Shi was both happy and nervous. Before he could say anything, the golden armor had already disappeared. Yuing Wan carried Hao Gue in his hands and said anxiously, "Don't worry about who he is, let's go to that mountain first." "All right." Han Shi nodded. Then, he looked at the unconscious Hao Gue and asked, "That's good, but why did you bring Hao Gue with you? No matter what, he's still the head of one of the 7 great clans. It's not appropriate to leave him behind like this. Let's go." The 3 of them also began to rush towards the mountain. Beside a small stream, Qin Yunji looked around in a daze. He then saw the mountain that reached into the sky. His expression changed and he charged towards it. At the foot of the mountain, Yuan Shu looked at the mountain greedily. Yi stood at the side and stared at Yi Hao, who was panting heavily on the ground, in case Yi Hao ran away. Yi Hao's spiritual qi, which had been depleted when he broke the seal, had recovered about 30%. His strength had also recovered a little. He looked up at Yuan Shu and asked, "Where is this place?" Yuan Shu laughed. "Here? This is the real ancestral ground. Haha, those idiots must have been teleported somewhere else. They won't be able to stop me in a short time. This way, I can carry out my plan without any scruples." Yuan Shu took out a black pearl and asked, "You must be familiar with this, right?" Yi Hao found it familiar. He immediately said, "This is the world that your Yuan clan contributed during the first round of the trial. The world where demonic beasts ran amok." "That's right," Yuan Shu said, "it's all thanks to this. Not only did we not get separated, but it also accurately teleported us to the foot of the mountain." "You really came prepared. What do you want to do?" "Noisy." Yuan Shu slapped Yi Hao's face and sneered. "I didn't ask you. Don't talk." Yuan Shu put away the pearl and started climbing the mountain. Yi pointed at Yi Hao's forehead. Yi Hao fainted. Yi carried him on his shoulder and started climbing the mountain with Yuan Shu. The mountain was very high. After climbing for a few hours, Yuan Shu and the others were only halfway up the mountain. However, the closer they got to the top, the more excited Yuan Shu became. At the same time, the black bracelet on his right wrist started vibrating. The 3 rested for a while and continued on their way. After a few more hours, the 3 were finally close to the top of the mountain. While resting, Yi came to Yuan Shu and asked, "Master, we've been climbing for 16 hours, but the sun in the sky has always been in the same position. It hasn't moved at all. What's going on?" Yuan Shu wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "This is a small sealed space. There are no other exits besides the cave, so very few people know about this place. That old guy only got a few demonic pearls from here and the news of a monster being sealed in this mountain. Other than that, there's nothing else. It seems that this place is indeed unusual. Even if the sun doesn't set, it should at least move. All right, don't worry about the sun. Let's climb the mountain as soon as possible. Yuanshu walked in front, and Ing Yi carried Yi Hao. The three of them headed for the top of the mountain. Before the three of them reached the peak, a white figure suddenly appeared at the top of the mountain. The white figure's eyes were covered with a white cloth. He came to the center of the mountain, where a black altar was placed. He seemed to be able to see the black altar. He slowly squatted down and reached out to touch it. He said, Yuanshu, Yuanshu, I'm afraid you're going to become someone else's wedding dress. This person was Yuanmu, who had rushed over from the celestial cloud pavilion. Yuanmu didn't stay at the altar for long. He found a hidden cave and sat down cross-legged. Suddenly, a strand of his soul floated out of his body. Yuanmu, whose soul had left his body, saw Yuanshu and the other two who were about to reach the top of the mountain. He also saw Ling Junyun and Yi Hao halfway up the mountain. He also saw the others who were climbing or approaching the mountain. He chuckled and suddenly slammed into the ground. The scene of his soul being torn apart didn't appear. After Yuanmu drilled into the ground, he very clearly rushed to the bottom of the mountain. Not long after, he arrived at the deepest part of the mountain. In the deepest part of the mountain there was a black altar. On the black altar there was a huge demonic beast. The demonic beast's body was wrapped in countless arm-thick chains. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.